Over 3 million years ago, your heaven-splitting clan was only a small clan in the eyes of our God clan. It was nothing significant in the saints' world. Do you think you can stand up to our God clan now that you have your heaven-splitting ancestor? Do you think that you can stand against our supreme war god? Adriana growled as she glared at him. The past is the past, and now is now. The heaven-splitting clan was indeed nothing in the eyes of the great clans of the saints' world in the past, but now, the ancestor of our heaven-splitting clan is one of the most powerful people below Grand Exalt. With him alone, we can stand up to your God clan. The current God clan is no longer the God clan of the past. As for your war god, he's far too weak right now. It'll take him quite some time before he fully matures. By then, our ancestor might have broken through the final bottleneck and earned the title of Grand Exalt for himself. Would we still have to fear your God clan anymore? Nan Shangyun said arrogantly. The current heaven-splitting clan did possess the right to look down on everything. Adriana's face sank. She knew that Nan Shangyun was telling the truth. The ancestor of the heaven-splitting clan had unprecedented talent. Among all the people who could take the final step and gain the title of Grand Exalt in the current saints' world, the heaven-splitting ancestor was definitely one of them. Ha ha ha, Nan Shangyun, you treat yourself like a big deal. Your heaven-splitting clan might not be weak, but what has it got to do with you? Do you really think your heaven-splitting clan is willing to go to war against the famed God clan for a mere God king like you? Like I said, you treat yourself like a big deal. Are you really great enough for your clan to do that? At this moment, Ming Dong, who stood beside Jian Chen, spoke out. He looked at Nan Shangyun like he was looking at a joke as he scoffed. Ming Dong, are you looking to die? Nan Shangyun glared at Ming Dong. His face darkened, and killing intent shone in his eyes. Ming Dong laughed aloud. He directly drew a god artifact and put on god artifact armor before charging towards Nan Shangyun aggressively. He sneered, the person who is looking to die is you. Today, I'll cripple you before everyone. I'd like to see whether your heaven-splitting clan really is as great as you describe it to be and whether they'd come to me looking for revenge. Ming Dong used his full strength right from the start. Pure laws of destruction condensed on the god artifact as he produced a strand of sword chi that was hundreds of meters long. It possessed the pressure of a god-tier battle skill as it chopped towards Nan Shangyun mercilessly. Impudent. I won't let you leave the Neptunian Divine Palace alive today just because of what you said, Nan Shangyun called out coldly. He held a violet and golden hammer. As he swung it, it pulsed with the energy of a god artifact. Nan Shangyun comprehended the laws of strength. That swing was enough to split the sky and ground. The terrifying power that gathered on the hammer made space ripple. In the sky, a thunderous boom rang out. Nan Shangyun was extremely powerful, where he was extremely close to the top 10 on the God King's throne. He managed to suppress Ming Dong right from the beginning. The ways are in heaven, at this moment, Ming Dong bellowed out. He extended a finger at the sky and a finger at the ground as a mysterious power radiated from him. And I stand in the world. In the next moment, Ming Dong's hands shifted. They moved along a wondrous and profound trajectory as they resonated and matched with the laws of the world. He shone with a hazy light. Nan Shangyun's eyes narrowed as he looked at Ming Dong with some seriousness. When Ming Dong began casting the mysterious secret technique, he became filled with an intense sense of unease. Along with it was dread that originated from the depths of his soul. It was as if the secret technique Ming Dong was casting right now was extremely impressive, possessing unfathomable power. Nan Shangyun gritted his teeth and no longer held back. His hammer became wrapped with the laws of strength, and he struck out with a god-tier battle skill in an attempt to disrupt Ming Dong's secret technique. For I am the heavenly ways. It was also at this moment that Ming Dong suddenly bellowed out. It was thunderous and deafening. A profound, mysterious power shot out from his body and enveloped Nan Shangyun. Nan Shangyun's face suddenly changed. Under the mysterious power, he actually lost all sense of his cultivation. He could not feel his comprehension of laws as if he had been forcefully struck back to being a mortal by someone at that moment, becoming the most ordinary mortal out there. Even the low-quality god artifact in his hand was affected as well. It stopped shining, and the god-tier battle skill he was about to cast collapsed and completely dispersed. What is this secret technique? Nan Shangyun cried out. He was panic-stricken as great fear filled his face. But in the next moment, Nan Shangyun emitted a chilling cry. The mysterious power invaded his soul and body, filling his entire body with excruciating pain. His soul rapidly dispersed and so did his cultivation under the invasion of the mysterious power. This form of dispersing was permanent. It would be very difficult to undo. It directly led to a downfall of his cultivation and comprehension of laws. In under 10 seconds, the mysterious power around Ming Dong vanished and so did the light that enshrouded him, revealing Ming Dong's pale face. Before him was the haggard Nan Shangyun. His eyes were blank as disbelief and shock filled his face, along with deep fear. He could sense his soul and cultivation once again now. However, not even 1/100th of his cultivation remained. It had dropped to the level between the origin realm and deity while his peak god king's soul also seemed to be ripped apart, with only a tiny fragment left behind. It had fallen to early deity. This was a permanent loss and could not be undone. He could only cultivate slowly if he wanted to recover, and due to the injuries to his soul, it would be difficult for him to recover to his peak condition even if he cultivated again. It could be said that Nan Shangyun of the Heaven-Splitting clan had been completely crippled after falling to such a level. Remember, my name is Ming Dong. Don't forget to get your clansmen to come and take revenge, Ming Dong said weakly with a pale face before directly punting Nan Shangyun far away. The surroundings became deathly silent. Everyone stared at the haggard, weakened Nan Shangyun blankly as their hearts churned in shock. Ming Dong's secretly technique had forcefully reduced a peak god king to a deity. They had never seen or heard of such a strange and terrifying secret technique. To their shock, Nan Shangyun had actually been crippled before everyone by Ming Dong, just like he had said he would do. Nan Shangyun was a member of the Heaven-Splitting clan. The current Heaven-Splitting clan was as prominent as the midday sun. Across the entire Saints world, there were basically no organizations that dared to stand up to the Heaven-Splitting clan now, yet Ming Dong was utterly fearless. It's the authority of the Grand Exalt. How does he know the authority of the Grand Exalt? Nearby, Adriana stared at Ming Dong with mixed feelings as her heart churned. How is this possible? How does Ming Dong know the authority of the Grand Exalt? Grasping this art requires the recognition of a Grand Exalt, and they must pass it on to them personally. However, all people who know this art, from a certain sense, are the Grand Exalt's successor because whenever a Grand Exalt passes this on to someone, they will suffer from a certain level of deterioration. Several kilometers away, the empty space actually trembled. Shui Yunlan, who was hidden there, voiced her shock. Out of the several hundred Supreme God Kings present, only Adriana and Shui Yunlan knew what Ming Dong's secret technique was. This was because one of them came from the God clan, while the other came from the Ice Goddess Hall. They were both peak organizations that possessed Grand Exalts in the past, so they had records of this. However, something happened at this moment. A huge hand appeared out of nowhere above Jian Chen's head and reached towards him with golden light and a suffocating pressure. Someone had secretly taken action. They wanted to take Jian Chen away while everyone else was still distracted. Jian Chen's heart shivered as he became extremely stern. When the huge, golden hand reached over, his body suddenly sank. He felt like the space around him had frozen at that moment. The owner of the huge, golden hand was extremely powerful. At that moment, Jian Chen truly felt like he was suffocating. However, he did not become flustered. Now that he had a god artifact, his battle prowess had increased significantly. Even though he was not as great as his opponent, he would not be overwhelmed to the point where he could not even fight back. His eyes shone brightly and sharply like swords. Chaotic force rampaged wildly within his body like a raging river, and all of it poured into the 9-star sword of heavenly ways. It immediately caused the sword to become blinding, seemingly shining with resplendent starlight. For gigantic stars seemed to appear. Jian Chen pointed the sword at the sky, and immediately, the unmatched might of a god artifact poured out from the 9-star sword of heavenly ways. With the power of stars, collided with the huge golden hand. The collision between the two was deafening. It was like the collision of two worlds, kicking up powerful streams of energy. Jian Chen extended his sword towards the sky as he stood strong with a great presence. He seemed like an invincible god of war. The ground beneath Jian Chen began to crack. His body sank slightly, where his feet had already sunken into the ground, only stopping up to his knees. The huge, golden hand above his head remained locked against Jian Chen's 9-star sword of heavenly ways for a while with terrifying power before dispersing. Like a set of dominoes, the sneak attack from the golden hand formally begun a great, intense battle. Immediately, the supreme god kings gathered there all struck out. Without any exception, they all looked at Jian Chen. A gleam of light flashed through Jian Chen's eyes. He stared at the hand that had already dispersed, and his face was filled with surprise, doubt, and some joy. He could feel the presence of a familiar power in the golden hand that had just attacked him. This presence was extremely similar to the golden divine dragon Rui Jin. Whoever harms my brother will become an enemy of mine. Ming Dong bellowed out furiously as killing intent surged into the air. He ingested a god-tier healing pill and struck out with his full strength, standing before Jian Chen. However, Ming Dong had depleted far too much energy from using the authority of the Grand Exalt earlier. He had paid a certain price himself, so he was nowhere close to his peak condition. It was impossible for him to stop so many Supreme God Kings. However, the Supreme God Kings did not dare to attack Ming Dong viciously because they had all seen Ming Dong's savagery. Everyone took him seriously. He did not even fear the heaven-splitting clan, so his confidence naturally struck fear in many people. As for the few Supreme God Kings who did know Ming Dong's identity, they all avoided Ming Dong from afar as they charged towards Jian Chen. They did not want to have a brush with him at all. Ming Dong, it doesn't matter what identity or background you have. I will make you feel regret today. The people of the Azure Peng lineage can't just be offended so easily, even if it's only an attendant. At the same time, killing intent rose up in Mo Cheng's eyes. He called out, "Do it." Young Master Mo Cheng, Ming Dong's origins are probably quite significant. Do you really want to do this? A few Supreme God Kings hesitated nearby. They came from various clans and organizations in the Saints' world. Mo Cheng had secretly contacted them, as he wanted to use them to kill Ming Dong. Although the Supreme God Kings knew that Ming Dong's origins were extraordinary, they did not think it would be overly terrifying. Once they considered how Mo Cheng was the Azure Peng King's disciple and how his personal talent and future potential was unlimited, they agreed to Mo Cheng's suggestion firmly in an attempt to establish good ties with Mo Cheng early on. They hesitated slightly now because they had seen how Ming Dong did not fear the heaven-splitting clan, which made them re-evaluate Ming Dong's background. Go on ahead. Ming Dong called out coldly. The Supreme God Kings looked at one another, and all of them gritted their teeth. They struck out decisively, killing their way towards Ming Dong. Don't you dare. The 5 divine generals of the heavenly palace of Bishing became furious. Before the Supreme God Kings could approach Ming Dong, they blocked them and engaged in an intense battle. After seeing his helpers being stopped, a vicious gleam of light flashed through Mo Chen's eyes. He took action personally, wielding a sword with the laws of the sword and destruction simultaneously, directly killing his way towards Ming Dong. He could tell that Ming Dong was extremely frail right now. His battle prowess was nowhere close to his peak, so Mo Cheng was confident he could put up a fight. After all, Mo Cheng was no regular god king. When he was still an over-god, he could kill god-kings, let alone now. Young master, allow me to assist you. Song Ying flew over from afar. Azure light flickered on him, and he turned into an azure peng as he charged towards Ming Dong with great speed. You want to kill me with just yourselves? Ming Dong snorted coldly. His face darkened as killing intent surged towards the sky. The laws of destruction erupted as he slashed out with his god artifact, knocking Mo Cheng far away and causing him to vomit blood. At the same time, Ming Dong's body shook. Song Ying's hands turned into claws as he swung them towards Ming Dong's god artifact armor with azure light. With the protection of a god artifact, Song Ying's strike failed to cause any real harm. Ming Dong responded with a slash, shooting through the air as a black streak of light with the might of a god-tier battle skill. He cut Song Ying in half along the waist. With Ming Dong attacked, the 5 divine generals became furious. Killing intent rose up, and they became enveloped by a blinding light. 5 sets of impressive, golden armor that flickered with light appeared on them, covering their bodies completely. Only their eyes were left revealed. They used their full strength to force back their opponents, and all of them returned to Ming Dong's side in a flash with no intentions of continuing the battle. They used their bodies to forge a tough fortress around Ming Dong to protect him. That's the armor specially made for divine generals of the heavenly palace of Bisheng. Why, you're actually... In the surroundings, the supreme god kings who had clashed with the 5 divine generals earlier all widened their eyes as they stared at the golden armor firmly. Their faces were filled with shock as they all backed away, no longer willing to keep fighting. They're actually divine generals of the heavenly palace of Bisheng. How is this possible? Why have the divine generals of the heavenly palace of Bisheng come to the Neptunian divine palace? Heavens, then what's Ming Dong's identity? Why has he been protected by the divine generals of the heavenly palace of Bisheng the entire time? A series of gasps rang out in the surroundings. At that moment, many people showed shock and disbelief. At the same time, they came to a realization, no wonder Ming Dong was so savage, where he did not even fear the heaven-splitting clan. As it turned out, he came from the heavenly palace of Bisheng. Why, you? Song Ying's face had completely paled now. It was filled with fear. He had clearly been frightened by the revelation of the 5 divine generals' identities. A tree of life appeared in the center of the encirclement. Adriana struck out as soon as she could to block the attacks from Jian Chen's surroundings. Jian Chen showed no weakness. Even though enemies were everywhere, his battle intent still surged. As chaotic force poured endlessly into his 9-star sword of heavenly ways, he engaged in battle against the many supreme god kings. However, with just the 2 of them, it was impossible to fend off so many supreme god kings. At that moment, both Adriana and Jian Chen were firmly suppressed. They had been forced on the defensive, as they completely lost the upper hand. As the target of everyone's attacks, Jian Chen was already covered in wounds and soaked in blood now. Jian Chen, hand over the girl, and we won't become your enemies. Jian Chen, you can't keep her. Just hand over the girl. For the sake of the heavenly palace of Bisheng, we won't do anything to you if you do that, a few supreme god kings called out in the surroundings. None of them wanted to fall out with the heavenly palace of Bisheng just because of Jian Chen. However, they wanted to get the girl as well, so they could not just give up like this. At this moment, a simple cauldron flew over. It shone with a bronze light as it arrived above Jian Chen's head. It emitted a suction in an attempt to swallow Jian Chen. A gleam of light flashed through Jian Chen's eyes when he saw the cauldron. He did not resist at all, allowing the cauldron to swallow him up. The cauldron immediately fled after sucking up Jian Chen. However, the surrounding supreme god kings all bellowed out furiously. Terrifying attacks rained down on the cauldron. With a vicious series of booms, the cauldron dimmed. It was knocked around in the air by the supreme god kings around it like a ball. Some supreme god kings drew their god artifacts and struck the cauldron with terrifying power, producing thunderous booms. The cauldron was a god artifact and not something that god kings could destroy. It remained undamaged after being hit by so many attacks, but the controller of the cauldron was unable to unleash its full power. In the end, the cauldron was knocked far away. It smashed through countless mountains and kicked rocks and dust into the air. As Jian Chen had been swallowed by the cauldron became the target of all the god kings. The cauldron had completely dimmed from all the attacks. It had basically drained all of its power to escape. The several hundred supreme god kings in the surroundings all shot over with lightning speed. Adriana took action as well. She hovered in the air as her life force churned. A gigantic tree thousands of meters tall appeared as countless branches shot out with emerald green light. They shot over the heads of the supreme god kings towards the cauldron. Powerful energy with God King level laws shook up the space. Over a dozen supreme God Kings struck out firmly, severing all the branches that reached towards the cauldron. Do you plan on becoming the enemy of the God clan just like the heaven-splitting clan? Jian Chen is someone that the supreme war god ordered to protect, Adriana growled. Her eyes were cold, and she was clearly angered. We naturally do not dare to become enemies of the God clan. We only want the girl. In reality, a battle like this in the eyes of the seniors is just a small fight among children. Why would it affect significant matters like the relationship between two clans? A supreme god king replied. Although he feared the god clan, he still did not give up on the Neptunian divine palace. At this moment, a supreme god king arrived before the cauldron. He extended a hand towards the cauldron as his eyes were filled with desire and excitement. However, as soon as he moved, all the supreme god kings in the surroundings attacked him at the same time. In just a split second, the rather powerful supreme god king who had approached the cauldron was heavily injured. He was at death's door as he directly fell out of the sky. Artifact spirit, quick, take Jian Chen and leave here. Fly away as quickly as possible. At the same time, a skinny old man was burning with anxiety as he communicated with the artifact spirit in a hurry. This old man was also a supreme god king from the god king's throne. He was the one responsible for sucking Jian Chen into the cauldron. Unfortunately, the power he could unleash through the god artifact as a god king was very limited. He would possess an absolute advantage if he faced individual enemies, but against several hundred god kings, there was nothing he could do despite his wishes. He was forced into a situation where he could only react to whatever that was thrown at him. In particular, he no longer had the power to control the god artifact now. He left everything up to the artifact spirit. Unfortunately, even though the cauldron was a god artifact, it had broken free from its owner's control, so it had lost its source of power. Even though it could not be damaged due to how tough its material was, it could only take a beating before several hundred supreme god kings. It was unable to escape. The huge, golden hand appeared once again, and it shone with golden light. It radiated with an extremely powerful pressure that was even more powerful than when it attacked Jian Chen before. It seemed to surpass god kings and reach the primordial realm. Before the supreme god kings could make it in time, the golden hand had wrapped around the cauldron tightly. So powerful. This person must rank within the top 10 of the god king's throne. The suffocating feeling from the golden hand made many supreme god kings shiver inside. It was also at this moment that a cold snort rang out from nowhere. It was not loud, but it completely drowned out the deafening booms from the collision of energy. A silver-haired young man with quite a striking appearance made his way over with a 9-meter-long spear. He was in white robes. He seemed to have fused with his spear as he stabbed out at the golden hand. Immediately, sparks crackled as lightning shot out. The moment the silver-haired young man stabbed out with his spear, he became coated in sparks, seemingly becoming a huge bolt of lightning. He moved extremely quickly. Boom! After being struck by the lightning attack from the silver-haired young man, the huge, golden hand directly dispersed, turning into violent energy that wreaked havoc in the surroundings. The silver-haired young man flicked his spear, and he threaded it through the two handles, locking the cauldron down firmly before reaching inside. It was also at this moment that the powerful attacks from the Supreme God Kings rained down on the young man with powerful ripples of energy, sealing off any path of retreat for the silver-haired young man. The silver-haired young man's face did not change. Sparks flickered around him, and he swept out with his spear, dispersing the closer attacks before turning into a bolt of lightning and unleashing great speed. He moved through the cracks between the attacks and broke out of the encirclement with great composure. Lei Daozi, taking something from my hands won't be that easy. However, just when the silver-haired young man was about to flee, a burly, 3-meter-tall man blocked his way. The man's face was emotionless, and his eyes were cold. He shone with dazzling golden light as he directly hurled out a fist. The power was frightening, causing the space there to ripple. Lei Daozi. The person who ranks sixth on the God King's throne, Lei Daozi. The silver-haired young man is Lei Daozi. He's a terrifying existence that ranks in the top 10 of the God King's throne. Cries immediately rang out in the surroundings when they heard Lei Daozi's name. Lei Daozi's face did not change. His pupils suddenly turned silver-white as if they possessed the power of lightning. Sparks flew in his eyes. Then he seemed to turn into a bolt of lightning as he shot over loudly with incomparable speed. The golden fist and lightning collided together like planets. It exploded loudly in the air, erupting with devastating might. Terrifying energy ripples splayed out, forcing the Supreme God Kings who ranked towards the bottom to a halt as they struggled to advance any further. After the clash, Lei Daozi shook, and he could not help but stagger a few steps back. Sparks flickered and flew from his body as it crackled. Before him, the 3-meter-tall burly man basked in golden light as he flew into the distance with the cauldron that Lei Daozi had grabbed. Ruedi, do you think you can escape before me? No matter how fast you are, do you think you're faster than my lightning? Lei Daozi snorted coldly. He turned into lightning as he pursued rapidly. He only needed to keep Ruedi busy. No matter how powerful Ruedi was, he would be powerless against several hundred Supreme God Kings. Chapter 2138, From the Same Homeland, 1. When Ruedi's name was mentioned, the Supreme God Kings in the surroundings became stunned once again. They were familiar with this name because it ranked fourth on the God King's throne. In the eyes of many Supreme God Kings, this ranking was extremely highly regarded. Lei Daozi, with me here, do you still think you can catch up to Ruedi? A gentle laughter rang out, and an extremely pretty woman who seemed to be in her 20s blocked Lei Daozi's way. Milky white flames flickered on her as she engaged in a battle against Lei Daozi. To another side, Ming Dong was utterly furious. He ignored his fragility as he used secret techniques through burning his essence blood. He pursued Ruedi with the 5 divine generals as he called out to the divine generals in a vicious manner, "Don't let me leave here without my brother no matter what. Otherwise, with that person's strength, my brother will probably be done for. I don't care what price you have to pay, stop that man. Save my brother and bring me that cauldron. As long as that cauldron is in my hands, I'd like to see who's bold enough to take it away." Ming Dong's voice was rather hoarse. At that moment, he was extremely furious. Killing intent filled his chest in particular when he saw how so many Supreme God Kings wanted to take Jian Chen away. "Yes, Ninth Majesty," the 5 divine generals replied together. Although they were also as powerful as Supreme God Kings, they were extremely polite to Ming Dong. The divine generals of the heavenly palace of Bishan were basically equivalent to guards, and in the heavenly palace of Bishan, all of the 9 majesties possessed extremely great statuses, making them existences only second to the master of the heavenly palace of Bishan, the Inata Grand Exalt. As a result, all majesties, regardless of their strength, could directly order them around. The 5 divine generals looked at one another and determination flooded their eyes. They were divine generals of the heavenly palace of Bishan. Every single one of them had been nurtured through the great efforts of the heavenly palace of Bisheng, where their battle skills, secret techniques, or cultivation methods were all objects of envy to many supreme god kings. As a result, even though Rui Di was powerful, it was still possible for the 5 of them to stop him through forbidden techniques. As for Ming Dong's safety, all of the supreme god kings had actually kept their distance from Ming Dong after the divine generals had their identities exposed. None of them dared to become enemies with Ming Dong. Even if they wanted to obstruct him, they would not be like before where they tried to kill him fearlessly. Ming Dong's identity as the 9th Majesty still had not been exposed. Everyone had only realized Ming Dong was related to the heavenly palace of Bisheng through the 5 divine generals. Aside from Adriana and Shui Yunlan, none of them were able to guess how he was actually connected. However, even with that being the case, none of them dared to offend Ming Dong. However, just when the 5 divine generals were about to use a forbidden technique, a terrifying stream of cold air came bombarding, causing the temperature in the surroundings to plummet. In the blink of an eye, snow billowed through the air as frost formed on the ground. The mountains and rivers were reduced to a world of ice in a split second. A person that seemed to fuse with the snow and ice appeared out of nowhere in the direction where Rui Di fled. She wore silver-white armor that wrapped around her firmly, only exposing a pair of icy cold eyes. At that moment, the previously hidden Shui Yunlan took action. She looked at Rui Di emotionlessly with her cold, beautiful eyes as she extended a slender finger towards Rui Di gently. With that, the space around Rui Di actually froze up at an unbelievable speed from a terrifying coldness. Moreover, the coldness rapidly spread towards Rui Di at an unstoppable speed, wanting to freeze his blood, suspend his soul in ice, and seal up his cultivation. Rui Di's face changed. As if he faced a powerful opponent, he bellowed out, and golden light erupted from around him. He seemed to have become a scorching sun that shone with blinding light as terrifying pulses of energy erupted like tsunamis. He punched out in a vicious and brutal manner, splashing through the great coldness that pervaded towards him and directly charged at Shui Yunlan. It had to be mentioned that Rui Di was extremely powerful. Just the power of his punch was devastating. It was enough to claim supremacy among god kings and match up to early infinite primes. Shui Yunlan seemed extremely gentle, but she received Rui Di's punch with great indifference. Her slender finger was covered in coldness as it drifted out as a palm strike, colliding with Rui Di's punch. The clash this time was not spectacular or disappointing. The terrifying power in Rui Di's punch was directly frozen by Shui Yunlan's coldness, and the coldness spread up Rui Di's arm at an unbelievable speed. It covered his body in a split second. Rui Di became covered in a thin layer of ice crystals. Rui Di's face changed as he became shocked. He bellowed out furiously, and his body swelled up. He burst through the ice crystals around him as he turned into a gigantic, golden dragon several hundred meters in length. His scales flickered with golden light. However, during this short clash, the cauldron that Rui Di had stolen had already ended up in Shui Yunlan's hands. Shui Yunlan grabbed the cauldron with one hand and looked at Rui Di, who had turned into a golden dragon. Her eyes narrowed slightly before she immediately flew off into the distance with the cauldron. This person is so powerful. Rui Di couldn't even last a few rounds against her. I'll go stop her. Follow behind me. Lei Daozi's eyes suddenly narrowed as his face was filled with seriousness. He flickered with sparks as he turned into a bolt of lightning, shooting off at great speeds. The woman bathed in white flames naturally stopped blocking Lei Daozi after seeing Shui Yunlan take the cauldron away. She tailed Lei Daozi closely as she chased Shui Yunlan with Rui Di, who had turned into a golden dragon. Shui Yunlan moved very quickly, but compared to Lei Daozi, who possessed an advantage in terms of laws, she was quite a lot slower. She was stopped by Lei Daozi. You're far too reckless. Shui Yunlan's eyes were ice-cold as killing intent filled them. With a flip of her hand, a fist-sized orb appeared, radiating with the pulses that belonged to a god artifact. Under Shui Yunlan's control, extremely terrifying coldness spewed out from the orb, enveloping Lei Daozi. Lei Daozi had just caught up with Shui Yunlan and still had not had the opportunity to strike. In the blink of an eye, he was reduced to an ice statue from the terrifying coldness of the orb. The coldness was just far too terrifying. It was completely unavoidable. Even when Lei Daozi was the supreme God King ranked 6th on the God King's throne, even when he wore a set of God artifact armor, he was still unable to resist at all. He could not even last for a split second, sealed up by ice in the blink of an eye. He had been frozen into a statue while he was still alive. Lei Daozi's eyes narrowed to the size of needles as shock filled them. This woman's strength was far more terrifying than he had expected. At that moment, he even doubted whether he was facing a God King. He felt like he faced an infinite prime instead. Moreover, he felt like it was an infinite prime of extraordinary strength. Bang! With that sound, Shui Yunlan used her god artifact again, and the orb in her hand immediately struck Lei Daozi's body. Immediately, Lei Daozi's body shattered. His body was reduced to countless pieces, falling out of the sky as a pile of ice crystals. Only the armor he wore and the spear remained undamaged. Chapter 2139, From the Same Homeland. 2. Lei Daozi's soul hovered high in the sky as he stared at Shui Yunlan in shock. He had lost his body. Shui Yunlan used the orb in her hands to bypass the defenses of Lei Daozi's god artifact and destroyed his body. If it were not for the god artifact's protection, it would not have been as simple as him losing his body. Even his soul would have been destroyed. Lei Daozi's heart shivered. He looked at the God Kings who rapidly drew closer from behind and no longer remained where he was. He used his soul to control the armor to protect himself and wrapped around the long spear before leaving the area as quickly as he could. Lei Daozi's fate had stunned all the supreme God Kings behind. Many of them looked at Shui Yunlan in fear. Lei Daozi was a supreme expert who ranked 6th on the God King's throne, yet he had almost been slain on the spot. It made their hearts beat heavily due to fear. Since Shui Yunlan had been kept busy for a while, Rui Di, who had transformed into a golden divine dragon, and the woman in white flames caught up as well. They two of them worked together against Shui Yunlan to take the cauldron from her. At the same time, the many supreme God Kings behind responded as well. A few confident people who believed that they were powerful charged over aggressively. A fraction of them dispersed, forming an encirclement to trap Shui Yunlan and stop her from leaving with the cauldron. Shui Yunlan really was very powerful. Against independent opponents, basically no one could match up to her. However, all the God Kings who were gathered here right now were the cream of the crop. They were all renowned God Kings who practiced extraordinary cultivation methods. Some of them even wielded God artifacts and could use God-tier battle skills, making their battle prowess supreme. Once they worked together, there would only be defeat for Shui Yunlan no matter how powerful she was. Reward came with risk. They all deeply understood this concept as they came, so even though the Supreme God Kings felt angst for Shui Yunlan, they did not shy away when they faced the temptation of the Neptunian Divine Palace. Shui Yunlan's cold eyes were grave at this moment. She looked at Rui Di and the woman in milky white flames as the light in her eyes flickered. Then she formed a seal with her two hands before her chest. Immediately, an even more powerful coldness radiated from Shui Yunlan. A huge, imposing, icy mountain appeared above her head and descended with force that seemed to be enough to flatten the world, crushing towards Rui Di and his companion. Rui Di and the woman in white flames became extremely grim. They could tell with a single glance that the icy mountain was a god-tier battle skill that Shui Yunlan had cast. It possessed the might of the world. Under the icy mountain, the two of them felt like they had been trapped there, unable to dodge and only able to resist. At this moment, an elated phoenix's cry rang out. The woman bathed in white flames turned into a gigantic phoenix. Flames surged around her, radiating with terrifying heat. Rui Di also emitted a clear dragon's cry that resounded through the surroundings. Golden light surged in the sky around him as every single scale on his body flickered with light. They pulsed with powerful energy, striking out with the phoenix beside him. They both used God-tier battle skills against the icy mountain. Boom! Boom! Under the thunderous sounds, Rui Di and the phoenix's God-tier battle skills struck the icy mountain, but they only caused it to tremble slightly. However, the icy mountain continued to fall, descending with tremendous, terrifying might as it suppressed the surroundings. Suppress! Shui Yunlan called out, and with a heavy boom, the icy mountain squashed down on the dragon and phoenix that stretched hundreds of meters in length. The ground shook as the sky seemed to pale. It was truly a devastating sight, like the end of the world. Crack! At the same time, cracks permeated the icy mountain. The dragon and phoenix were very powerful, and the phoenix happened to comprehend the laws of fire, which just happened to be the opposite of the laws of ice. The suppression from the icy mountain was unable to last for even a few seconds against them. If you come from a place called the Beast God Continent from a lower world, don't fight with me. Jian Chen has ties with your clansmen. My actions are to save Jian Chen, Shui Yunlan secretly said to the dragon and phoenix under the icy mountain. Afterwards, she did not hesitate at all and flew off into the distance as she carried the cauldron in one hand. At the same time, the icy mountain over Rui Di and the phoenix exploded loudly. It was reduced to countless pieces of ice that scattered in all directions. Rui Di and the phoenix had broken free. However, they did not continue their pursuit of Shui Yunlan after breaking free. Instead, they stood where they were as they stared at Shui Yunlan's figure with widened eyes. Their faces were filled with shock and disbelief. The Beast God Continent. I once heard an elder in the sect mention that our sect of dragons and phoenixes did originally come from a place called the Beast God Continent. But only people with a certain amount of status can learn about this in our sect, so how does she know? The phoenix surged with flames as she radiated with terrifying heat, preventing many supreme god kings from drawing near her. Her face was filled with confusion. The Beast God Continent is the homeland of our sect of dragon and phoenixes. Does this person also come from our homeland? And she mentioned that Jian Chen has ties with our clansmen. What is that about? The golden divine dragon, Rui Di, was also perplexed. He had no idea what was going on. Ji Yi, let's follow them. We have to get to the bottom of this. If they really do come from the same homeland. I've only heard about some things from a few elders about our homeland. Now that so much time has passed, who knows how our homeland has become? That's the ancestral lands of our sect of dragons and phoenixes, said Rui Di. It's said that there's also a Tian Yuan continent, Ji Yi murmured softly. Her feelings were mixed, and she immediately pursued with Rui Di. Up ahead, Shui Yunlan did not manage to escape successfully. She was stopped once again and engaged in a battle against 3 supreme god kings. One of the supreme god kings she fought against was extremely powerful. He comprehended the laws of the sword and wielded a god artifact sword while wearing god artifact armor. Every single move of his possessed extremely great power from the laws of the sword. He was quite a lot more powerful than Rui Di. Although it was 3 against 1, he was able to hold his ground in an open confrontation against Shui Yunlan. One of the other 2 people was a skinny old man. He comprehended the laws of death, and he radiated with death. The vitality and life force of whatever he came in contact with it would be drained away. Everything withered wherever he went, reduced to a land of death. The third person wore a large cloak, completely obscuring her appearance. She gave off a sense of mysteriousness and comprehended the laws of illusions. She resided in the illusions, causing the illusions and reality to constantly replace each other. It was very difficult to deal with. The person would reveal her hands from time to time as she fought Shui Yunlan, clearly revealing a pair of extremely pale, claw-like hands that were basically just skin and bones. The three of them were extremely powerful. Every single one of them was like a primordial realm expert, without paling in comparison to Shui Yunlan at all. Now, as the three people worked together, their battle against Shui Yunlan was devastating. Every single move was destructive, where the ripples of energy that shot out were like tidal waves. I, Zhu Wen, originally thought that I had no more opponents among God Kings apart from that monstrosity called Qin Shan. But never had I thought that I'd encounter such a powerful opponent in the Neptunian Divine Palace today. I wonder if I, Zhu Wen, have the right to learn the name you go under. The sword-wielding man with the laws of the sword growled among Shui Yunlan's three opponents. Although he was talking, his attacks did not tarry or slow down at all. Like galaxies, his sword qi shone as a streak of light. They were extremely sharp and extraordinarily powerful. That person is actually Zhu Wen. No wonder he's so powerful. Zhu Wen is a figure of legends that ranks second on the God King's throne, only second to Qin Shan. However, the woman with the laws of ice doesn't seem any weaker than him at all, and she's fighting three people at the same time, against Zhu Wen and two other people who seem to rank in the top 10 as well. Who is she? She can't be an infinite prime whose cultivation fell to God King, right? Or maybe she's a reincarnation of those supreme existences that stand at the apex. Otherwise, how can she be so powerful? Many people became curious about Shui Yunlan's identity, and they all began to guess inside. Shui Yunlan did not reply. Her personality was just like the laws she controlled, extremely cold, just like unmeltable ice. At this moment, the supreme God King in the cloak who comprehended the laws of illusions let out a strange peal of laughter. She said in an old and husky voice, "I am Sheng Man, ranked 7th on the God King's throne. Although I do not know who this fellow who comprehends the laws of death is, I'm certain you're also someone who ranks within the top 10 of the God King's throne. It's nothing difficult for us to kill some regular infinite primes when we work together given our strength. Apart from that deviant Qin Shan, there's probably no one else who can hold their ground against the three of us without suffering defeat out of all the God Kings in the world. Even the direct disciples of those sovereigns of the world can't achieve that. If there really was such a person, I think that there's probably no one else in the saints' world who possesses the power to do so aside from Shui Yunlan, who has remained on the God King's throne for over 3 million years. Shui Yunlan's gaze turned cold from that. A sliver of intense killing intent flickered through her eyes. Her glare toward Sheng Man was icy cold. Shui Yunlan's response immediately allowed Zhu Wen to confirm Sheng Man's guess. A gleam of light flashed through his eyes immediately, and he called out, "Shui Yunlan, it really is you." The exposure of Shui Yunlan's identity immediately caused an uproar in the surroundings. In reality, everyone was extremely curious about her identity. Many people had tried to guess it. Now that her name was learnt by everyone, they all became extremely astounded. They could accept it if it was an unfamiliar name, as they would just believe that she did not attempt the God King's throne. However, not only did they happen to be familiar with the name Shui Yunlan, but they were even extremely familiar with it. It was also because they were familiar with it that they were in shock and disbelief. This was because Shui Yunlan only ranked 6th on the God King's throne. Although it was quite a high ranking, a certain distance still existed between her position and Zhu Wen, who ranked 2nd. However, Zhu Wen was unable to do anything to Shui Yunlan right now. In reality, even when Zhu Wen worked together with the other two people who ranked in the top 10 against Shui Yunlan, they still failed to gain any advantage at all. It was exactly because of this that many people became confused. Over 3 million years ago, Shui Yunlan ranked 9th on the God King's throne. However, the God King's throne only records experts in the current age and not people from history, which is why the rankings on there change frequently. Once a supreme God King dies or breaks through to the primordial realm, their name will disappear from the God King's throne, a supreme God King slowly explained from among the crowd at this moment. Although he was a middle-aged man, he had clearly lived for a long time as he knew quite a lot. According to my observations of the top 10 on the God King's throne, the record of Shui Yunlan's strength has not moved for over 3 million years. The reason why her ranking has moved from 9th to the 6th is not because she attempted the God King's throne again. Instead, it was because the people who ranked higher than her either broke through to the primordial realm or died, causing their names to disappear. As a result, Shui Yunlan's ranking moved up as time went on. Although Shui Yunlan's ranking would change frequently throughout the millions of years, rising and falling, none of it was ever caused by herself. Instead, it was because other supreme god kings had either surpassed her and ranked higher than her, broke through, or died, making their names vanish. This caused her ranking to move. As a result, Shui Yunlan's current ranking of 6th on the God King's throne records her strength over 3 million years ago. On the other side, Shui Yunlan's face sunk very much. She scanned the surroundings coldly as killing intent surged within her heart. She was tempted to kill everyone present. Now that the Ice Goddess Hall was in trouble and under the traitor Wu Han's control, she did not want to expose herself. Even if these people only knew her name and did not know she came from the Ice Goddess Hall, she could not be certain whether the name would reach the Ice Goddess Hall or not. Once Wu Han learnt she had returned to the Saints' world, she would naturally guess that Shui Yunlan had found the Snow Goddess. When that happened, she would definitely try to hunt down the Snow Goddess regardless of the price and eliminate her before she had recovered. It was exactly because of this that Shui Yunlan had never revealed her identity when she was in the Neptunian Divine Palace. Sigh, Shui Yunlan exhaled gloomily. She knew that she was powerless to change anything now. It was impossible for her to slaughter so many supreme god kings with her current strength. At this moment, she could not help but think about the sorrow she experienced when she first came to the Neptunian Divine Palace. She did not want to be sucked into battles that were too great. She did not even want to fight and had not even been prepared to fight. She only hoped to gather some cultivation resources here so that the Snow Goddess could recover as soon as possible. However, Jian Chen's appearance had completely destroyed her original plans. She did not dare to return to the Ice Goddess Hall, as it was in trouble. In order to eliminate Wu Han and the other traitors as well as to protect the Snow Goddess better, she needed to find powerful help. However, the Ice Goddess Hall was known for being proud and aloof. They did not have any connections with other organizations, let alone close ties. As a result, the current Ice Goddess Hall was basically alone. Now, the mysterious Mo Tianyun, who also happened to have grievances with Nan Patian of the Moon God Hall, had become the best person for her to work with. However, to find Mo Tianyun, she required Jian Chen's assistance, so she had to help out when Jian Chen faced danger. And as a result, her identity was exposed, forcing the Snow Goddess into danger. Shui Yunlan's heart became extremely heavy. At this moment, sword chi surged and crisscrossed. Just when Shui Yunlan was distracted, Zhu Wen's sword cut through the protective ice around Shui Yunlan as it shone resplendently, striking Shui Yunlan's chest mercilessly with an attack that completely matched up to infinite primes. Shui Yunlan produced a deep grunt. Zhu Wen was a terrifying god king who ranked second on the God King's throne after all. His battle prowess was extremely great, so after taking on this attack, Shui Yunlan became quite injured despite the protection of a god artifact armor. As her body was blown away and blood oozed out from her mouth, clearly exposed outside on the silver-white armor. It was eye-catching. Shui Yunlan is injured. She can't last much longer. Let's go take that cauldron together, everyone. Many god kings in the surroundings became riled up by this sight, so they all struck out. Shui Yunlan, you better hand over Jian Chen now. You may be powerful, but you can't take Jian Chen away with you, the skinny old man who comprehended the laws of death sneered. Afterwards, his hands danced, and a dense power of death surged out, forming a dense, gray mist that enveloped Shui Yunlan. As soon as the power of death appeared, vegetation withered as they were reduced to nothing. The entire world darkened as if all of its vitality had been sucked away. What terrifying power of death! In the surroundings, the expressions of the supreme god kings who had gotten too close changed. They had just approached the power and had not come in contact with it, yet they felt weak as if their vitality was being drained away rapidly. It startled them, immediately causing them to come to a halt. Enveloped by the power of death, Shui Yunlan's face hidden beneath her helmet paled. Gray mist appeared in her eyes from time to time, which were the only part of her body exposed. The power of death had already invaded her body through this opportunity, causing her to become weaker and weaker. The tremendous vitality in her leaked away at an unbelievable rate under the corrosion of the power of death. At the same time, a withered hand appeared behind Shui Yunlan silently, pressing against her body with lightning speed. Sheng Man, who comprehended the laws of illusions and hid in between lies and reality, struck out as well, injuring Shui Yunlan. Spurt. This time, Shui Yunlan directly vomited a mouthful of blood. Cold blood seeped through her armor, spurting out in the surroundings. With just one incorrect step, she was doomed. Shui Yunlan's carelessness had destroyed all the advantages she had before, throwing her into danger. After all, she did not possess Jian Chen's tough chaotic body, which could endure wounds of any degree without affecting battle prowess at all. Now, after having taken on the powerful strikes of 3 supreme god kings, Shui Yunlan had become quite injured. At the same time, the cauldron in Shui Yunlan's hands ended up with Sheng Man, who had appeared behind her. Sheng Man took the cauldron and produced a strange snigger before immediately fading away. She seemed to fuse into the space, fleeing off into the distance. Zhu Wen's gaze turned cold. He struck out with his sword, and resplendent sword chi directly shot through Sheng Man's body, but it failed to injure the illusionary Sheng Man. The old man who comprehended the laws of death also targeted Sheng Man now, striking out with lightning speed. Afterwards, several hundred supreme god kings engaged in a struggle between the strong around the cauldron. Every single person among them was the cream of the crop, where they were the exact opposite of simple. Against several hundred supreme god kings, Sheng Man was unable to escape with the cauldron even if she grasped the laws of illusions. Several hundred god artifacts danced in the air as powerful ripples of energy shook up the surroundings. The blood of god kings soaked the land. Supreme god kings constantly suffered heavy injuries in this battle of great intensity. There were even a few people who directly died here, where their souls were dispersed. The cauldron had already changed hands several times. It was in the center of the violent storm, enduring extremely vicious strikes. If it had not been a low-quality god artifact, it probably would have been reduced to pieces long ago. No one paid any more attention to the owner of the cauldron. Everyone only had one objective, and that was to escape with the cauldron. Shui Yunlan, how do you know about the beast god continent? Have you been to our homeland? The golden divine dragon, Roe Di, and the phoenix, Ji, arrived before Shui Yunlan as they asked her eagerly. They were hopeful. Shui Yunlan's gaze remained cold, without any emotions. However, Adriana flickered with green light beside her as she poured tremendous life force into Shui Yunlan, assisting her in suppressing the power of death and helped to heal her wounds. She had grievances with Shui Yunlan, but Adriana was not someone who would ignore the bigger picture. She knew that she was unable to protect Jian Chen all by herself with the current situation. She had to work with Shui Yunlan. As a result, even if she was completely reluctant inside, she had to do this. It's not the time to discuss this right now. If you really do belong to the dragon and phoenix clans that came to the saints' world with the winged tiger god 1,000,000 years ago, then help Jian Chen because he also comes from the Tianyuan continent, and he has ties with you clansmen. The person who answered Roe Di and Ji Yi was Adriana. Roe Di and Ji Yi were shocked. Although they did not come from that age, they did hear quite a lot of stories about 1,000,000 years ago from their seniors. They knew that they were originally two powerful clans in the lower world and had no idea about the Saints' world back then. They just followed a winged tiger god, and under its lead, they undertook a mass migration, moving from the lower world to the Saints' world and establishing a sect of dragons and phoenixes in the Saints' world. This information was a secret in the sect of dragons and phoenixes. Only clansmen who possessed a certain level of status could learn about it. Information that was originally completely secret was actually known by Shui Yunlan and Adriana, and they had mentioned the Tian Yuan continent. They seemed extremely familiar with this lower world. What could it all mean? At this moment, three old men sat in a triangle on a mountain peak several 100,000 kilometers away. A tremendous formation had been perfectly cast down between the three of them, radiating with powerful pulses of energy. The formation has basically finished charging up, and its target presence has been locked onto as well. "It's time we do it," one of the old men said. The other two old men nodded at the same time. They all created hand seals and activated the formation. Immediately, supreme power erupted from the formation like a tidal wave, causing it to light up and flood the mountain range with light. Several 100,000 kilometers away, the space around the cauldron that all the supreme god kings fought over suddenly distorted violently. Under everyone's gazes, the cauldron abruptly vanished. When it appeared again, it was in the center of the formation drawn up by the three old men several 100,000 kilometers away. The cauldron has been stolen by somebody through a secret technique. It's over there. Chase them down. They're looking to die by stealing from the powerful. Many supreme god kings roared out as they flew towards the three old men several 100,000 kilometers away. Although the cauldron had vanished, its unique pulses as a god artifact still remained. Coupled with how the energy pulses from when the three old men stole the cauldron were too powerful, they were unable to hide it from the supreme god kings even though they were so far away. "Go!" the three old men called out. They combined their strength to ensnare the struggling cauldron as they left as quickly as they could. However, at this moment, a fist-sized tower that seemed extremely damaged suddenly flew out from the cauldron. Under the shocked gazes of the three old men, a figure silently appeared. This person, unsurprisingly, was Jian Chen. With a wave of his hand, Jian Chen stowed the Enata tower away. He clasped his fist at the three old men and smiled, "Thank you, the three of you. If it were not for you, I probably would not have been able to escape from their encirclement." With that, Jian Chen turned around and left. He used the linear lightning release and hurried off. God damn it, it's Jian Chen. How did he break free from the restraints of a god artifact and escape here? The three old men bellowed out in exasperation as they watched Jian Chen fly off into the distance. We expended so much effort to cast down the heaven-stealing formation to capture Jian Chen, and all we needed to do was leave the Neptunian Divine Palace, and the seniors outside would naturally be able to deal with him. But in the end, a mistake happened. What are you staring for? We can't let him escape. Chase him. Do you think chasing him will be useful? Jian Chen may only be an early god king, but his battle prowess is on par with supreme god kings. Even with the three of us working together, we can't defeat him. We might even end up losing our own lives. Quit blabbering and run. That huge group of supreme god kings are all traveling towards us. Not only have we failed to capture Jian Chen, but we've even become the people responsible for his escape. They'll never spare us from how angry they are. The faces of the three old men were extremely ugly. They glanced at the large group of supreme god kings who shot over from several 100,000 kilometers away, and regret filled their faces as they fled in the other direction. Up ahead, Jian Chen shone brightly as he was coated in a layer of sword chi. He turned into a bolt of lightning as he fled with great speed. Behind him, several hundred supreme god kings pursued relentlessly. They used secret techniques and turned into streaks of light as they traveled as quickly as they could, covering tens of thousand kilometers in just a few seconds. Although they were separated by several 100,000 kilometers, an uncrossable distance in the eyes of mortals. It only took the supreme god kings a few minutes as they traveled at full speed. Shui Yunlan, Adriana, and Rui Di and Ji Yi from the sect of dragons and phoenixes were also in the pursuing group. However, the four of them had clearly already banded together. Ming Dong and his 5 divine generals were also in this group. At this moment, Ming Dong bellowed out, and a red flame sprang up on his body. His speed immediately exploded, surpassing everyone. He made his way to the front. At the same time, Ming Dong's vitality withered away. His long, fluttering hair turned silver-white at a visible rate. Clearly, Ming Dong had paid an extremely great price for the terrifying burst of speed. Jian Chen, enter my divine hall. My divine hall resides in my soul. I'd like to see if anyone is bold enough to extract my soul, Ming Dong bellowed out. A small divine hall appeared in his hand. It was extremely intricate. Stop him. Don't let Jian Chen enter the divine hall. A supreme god king called out from behind. If they had not known Ming Dong's identity, they naturally would not have cared whether Jian Chen entered Ming Dong's divine hall or not. They could just directly kill both of them. However, everyone now knew that Ming Dong had connections with the heavenly palace of Bisheng, and he was even protected by 5 divine generals. His status was extraordinary. If Ming Dong really let Jian Chen into his divine hall, and then hid the divine hall in his soul, the supreme god kings really would not be bold enough to do anything to him. Up ahead, Jian Chen also sensed Ming Dong's vitality rapidly leak away. His heart sank slightly, and the senses of his god king level soul expanded, permeating a region of several 100,000 kilometers. He enveloped Ming Dong, Shui Yunlan, and Adriana, and a voice that only the 3 of them could hear rang out. After receiving Jian Chen's message, Ming Dong was stunned. He looked at Jian Chen doubtfully, and the red flames around him rapidly receded. He also slowed down. At the same time, Shui Yunlan and Adriana's eyes narrowed as surprise and doubt filled their faces. Don't chase anymore. Jian Chen has his plans. Adriana stopped Rui Di and Ji Yi. He has a plan. There are several hundred supreme god kings here, and even the person who ranks second, Zhu Wan, is among them. What plans can he have? Rui Di and Ji Yi were confused. Heya, do you see them? Memorize them for me. Jian Chen also stopped temporarily. He called out Heya and pointed at Ming Dong and Adriana from afar. I see them, and I've memorized them. Heavens, they're all supreme god kings. As soon as Heya came out, he paled in fright as his legs trembled. The grand scene of several hundred supreme god kings bunched together had a huge impact on his soul. It scared him witless. Jian Chen stowed Heya back into the regular divine hall before charging towards the 6th floor without even looking back. Afterwards, Jian Chen did not stop. With all the supreme god kings behind him, he directly made his way up the floors of the Neptunian divine palace. He flew through the 6th and 7th floors before directly arriving in the volcanic world of the 8th floor. Basically at the moment Jian Chen set foot on the 8th floor, several supreme god kings behind him reached the floor as well. Zhu Wan, Sheng Man, and the expert with the laws of death were among them. Although the other few people did not know who one another were, they were extremely powerful. Although they were not as powerful as the 3 who ranked in the top 10, they were not much weaker either. They were the fastest group of people, having basically tailed right behind Jian Chen the entire time. The other supreme god kings fell behind and were still making their way over. Jian Chen, you can't escape, nor can you protect the girl. Hand over the girl, and for the sake of the heavenly palace of Bisheng and the god clan, I won't cause you any trouble, Zhu Wan growled. That's right. None of us want to offend the god clan or the heavenly palace of Bisheng. You better hand over the girl. We won't make things difficult for you, said the old man with the laws of death. The other supreme god kings all looked at Jian Chen with mixed feelings. He was a mere early god king, yet he had connections with both the god clan and the heavenly palace of Bisheng. It made them envious. There's only one girl, but there are so many of you. May I ask who I would hand her to? Jian Chen joked. That's not your problem. You just need to hand over the girl. It'll naturally be up to our own capability as to who possesses the girl in the end. We just won't be attacking you. Of course, if you insist on keeping her, we'll take action even if we risk offending the God clan and the heavenly palace of Bisheng, the supreme God king said. They were determined, expressing that they would not be giving up on the girl. As they spoke, more and more supreme God kings arrived on this floor. The people who had fallen behind rapidly caught up. Jian Chen suddenly smiled strangely. He glanced at the supreme God kings and said, I am undefeatable on this floor, so why must I hand her to you? With that, Jian Chen suddenly fell towards the lava below. At the same time, the space where he stood before pulsed, and a rope that flickered with violet light suddenly appeared. It restricted the region with the power of space. If Jian Chen had been slightly slower, he would have been restrained by the rope. Plop! A distinct sound rang out from the scorching hot lava below. Under the surprised and confused gazes of all the supreme god kings, Jian Chen dove into the lava without any defensive preparations, vanishing from sight. Chapter 2143, The Lizard Moves. He actually dove into the lava. Is he looking to die? God damn it. Jian Chen would rather commit suicide than give the girl to us, many supreme god kings swore out loud. None of them dared to do anything. They were not bold enough to dive into the lava like Jian Chen. In reality, even if they ranked among the top 10 of the God King's throne, they dared not dive into the lava alone with God artifacts. They would only be able to last for a while if many people poured their strength together and unleashed the full might of the God artifacts. Humph, it's not the first time Jian Chen has entered the lava. It's said that he was struck into the lava several years ago. Everyone believed he was dead, but isn't he still alive right now? Everyone be careful. This is Jian Chen's scheme. He wants to stun us like this, and then move through the lava before escaping somewhere else, that's right. Jian Chen has a way to survive in the lava. Everyone disperse. We can't let him escape under our watch. Jian Chen took out the Inata tower as soon as he entered the scorching lava. He hid in there and dove towards the very depths with it. He expanded the Inata tower to several hundred meters tall and rampaged through the lava, smashing through many rocks in there. He punched through the bases of several volcanoes, causing a very great disturbance. Jian Chen's actions directly influenced the surface of the lava. The entire sea of lava suddenly began to churn violently and several volcanoes nearby directly collapsed. Their huge bodies fell into the lava, kicking up flames into the air. It caused the fire-attributed energy in the entire space to become abnormally violent, and the many volcanoes were stimulated, causing them to erupt. The entire 8th floor rained with lava. God damn it, what's happening? Why has the situation here changed so drastically all of a sudden? It must be Jian Chen. It must be caused by that bastard. How did he do this from under the lava? The supreme god kings in the surroundings all began to curse out loud. They resented Jian Chen very much. Every single one of them wore armor as they dodged the descending lava in horrible conditions while their faces were sunken. I'm very curious as to what Jian Chen is using to survive so long in the lava, and why he's able to create such great disturbance. Xing Man, who wore a large cloak, croaked with her old voice as her body had already become illusionary. Jian Chen must have a god artifact of impressive quality. It's very likely that he's surviving in the lava through the use of this god artifact. Zhu Wen constantly shot out sword chi to disperse the lava above him as he growled. The nearby supreme god kings all spoke out when they heard that. Even low-quality god artifacts can't last for long under the lava. The bottom of the lava can even melt low-quality god artifacts, so does Jian Chen possess a medium-quality God artifact? It's difficult for infinite primes to unleash all the power in medium-quality God artifacts, and they're normally used by chaotic primes. It's impossible for Jian Chen to use one with his mere God King cultivation. Even if he gains the recognition of the artifact spirit, he can't power such a great God artifact with his cultivation. Oh right. There seems to be a damaged little tower with Jian Chen. The little tower has appeared many times. Do you think it's the little tower? The little tower is so damaged. I think it has almost been ruined. Apart from being tough, a God artifact close to ruin has no other uses. It does not even give off have the might of a God artifact anymore, so what can it do? That's not necessarily the case. God artifacts of impressive qualities can still remain fine in the lava based on their toughness alone even when they're damaged. If Jian Chen really is using an almost ruined God artifact to move through the lava, just what quality has the God artifact reached? Is it medium quality or high quality? Jian Chen hid in the Inata tower at the bottom of the lava. He controlled the tower and flew all over the place like a headless fly. Where are you hiding, lava lizard? Come out. Come out, Jian Chen repeated in his heart from within the Inata tower. He was both eager and excited as he waited for the lizard to appear. He had already planned out everything inside. His plan that specially targeted all the Supreme God Kings silently unfurled. He planned to draw the lizard hidden at the bottom of the lava outside and deal with the Supreme God Kings through its terrifying strength. At this moment, Jian Chen clearly sensed the Inata tower tremble gently, and his eyes immediately lit up. He beamed with joy, and even his breathing had become ragged. This was because it was impossible for the tremor to be caused by colliding into the rocks. Only the attacks of the lizard could have caused this. I've finally alarmed you. Jian Chen stood on the first floor with the 9-star sword of heavenly ways as he secretly celebrated inside. With a flash, he left the tower and appeared outside. Immediately, the scorching lava pressed against him and caused his chaotic body to redden in a single instance. Jian Chen completely ignored the lava around him. His eyes immediately became locked onto a huge shadow. The two huge eyes of the lizard that always lived in the lava stared directly at the Inata tower as they revealed human-like curiosity. After learning the lizard's precise location, Jian Chen no longer remained outside anymore. He immediately entered the tower, and then he made the tower rise high up above the lizard's head before smashing down heavily. Bang! With a heavy thud, the Inata tower struck the lizard's head heavily with a terrifying force. It was to the point where the lizard saw stars. Its huge head tottered about as if it was intoxicated. However, it returned to its senses very quickly. It became enraged from the pain in its head as fury filled its two huge eyes. It directly swung a claw towards the Inata tower, knocking it several hundred meters away. Jian Chen stabilized the Inata tower and did not stop there. He tilted the Inata tower to its side and shot towards the lizard with its conical ceiling, moving as quickly as he could and striking the lizard once again. It caused the lizard to tumble quite a few times. This time, the lizard was clearly in much greater pain than before. It emitted a furious roar at the sky, causing the surrounding lava to churn. Its eyes had already become bloodshot as it charged towards the Inata tower with great fury. The Inata tower immediately shot up, flying towards the surface of the lava. The gigantic lizard tailed it closely in extreme anger. The lava is becoming more and more violent. The waves have actually reached thousands of meters high. This has never happened before. Just what is Jian Chen, that bastard, doing down there? No matter what he's doing, it's impossible for him to create such a shocking sight with his strength. Something must have happened down there. Chapter 2144, Sitting and waiting for them to come. All the Supreme God Kings hovered at an altitude of 10,000 meters in the sky. They all stared at the churning sea of lava as the light in their eyes flickered with uncertainty. Currently, the sea of lava could no longer be described as just churning. All the lava pulsed violently as great waves constantly rose and fell, sweeping through the sky. They became more and more violent as if there was a furious dragon stirring up the entire place. All the supreme god kings present shivered when they saw this. They felt like a chill had run down their spines. The lava was not ordinary. It was thousands of times hotter than the core of the sun, something terrifying that even infinite primes had to treat with caution. Suddenly, a damaged tower several hundred meters in height burst out of the lava and directly flew into the sky. The supreme god kings all beamed the moment they saw the tower appear. Immediately, some of them charged towards the tower. However, not everyone did that. Some people glanced at the Enata tower before looking at the churning lava below. They had clearly sensed something, and they were grave. Something is off. There's something in the lava, a supreme god king said solemnly. As soon as he said that, the churning lava below everyone suddenly exploded. A gigantic, fire-red lizard abruptly burst out. It glared at the Enata tower furiously and swung its tail. With a sonic boom, it struck the Enata tower with unbelievable speed, producing a heavy rumble. The Enata tower was unscathed, only having been blown several hundred meters away by the tail. However, the lizard from the lava was also in pain. It cried out and bared its teeth in pain. However, this caused it to become even more feral as bloodthirstiness filled its eyes. The primordial realm. It's the primordial realm. It's a beast that has reached the primordial realm. No, impossible. Once you reach the primordial realm, you can't enter the Neptunian divine palace. How can a primordial realm magical beast appear here? This presence definitely does not belong to early infinite prime. It's even greater than early infinite primes. Heavens, is there something wrong with my eyes? How can such a terrifying existence appear in the Neptunian divine palace? It's at the fourth heavenly layer of infinite prime at the very least. It has reached mid-infinite prime. Run, we're not its opponent. Jian Chen, that bastard, has actually drawn out such a terrifying beast. I will never spare him. All the people in the surroundings became shocked and they saw the gigantic lizard burst out of the lava. Their hearts churned. Jian Chen appeared out of nowhere above the Enata tower with the 9-star sword of heavenly ways. With a wave of his hand, he stowed the Enata tower away before looking at the supreme god kings who had extremely spectacular expressions. He could not help but laugh aloud. Everyone, this lizard is far too powerful. My strength is limited, so I am not its opponent, so I can only trouble you. Don't worry too much. There are so many of you, so as long as you work together, you definitely will be able to slay this huge lizard. As for me, it's not like I'll be of any help. I'll get in the way of everyone dealing with the lizard, so I'll be leaving first. With that, Jian Chen took out a cosmic movement talisman and vanished. He had already left the floor. Jian Chen, you despicable, many supreme god kings gritted their teeth, but they did not dare to remain any longer. They flew away from the lizard as they fled in all directions. The lizard's original target was Jian Chen, but now that Jian Chen had abruptly vanished, it naturally directed all its rage towards the supreme god kings around. Its tongue shot out and directly wrapped around a supreme god king, swallowing him whole. With a swing of its claws, 2 supreme god kings were smashed to pieces, where their souls dispersed. As its tail swept out, a large group of god kings had their bones shattered. At that moment, the enraged lizard began a mindless massacre on the 8th floor. It was invincible, where no one could put up a fight against it at all. In just a short while, the supreme god kings were either injured or dead. I would have the confidence to fight this lizard if it was at the first heavenly layer of infinite prime, but it's just too powerful, so I can only leave first. Xingman shrouded in the cloak had already become illusionary. As she said that, she directly charged towards the entrance to the 7th floor. However, it was also at this moment that the lizard opened its mouth and spat out scorching flames. It engulfed an entire region, swallowing up Xingman and 6 other supreme god kings. The flames enveloped the 7 supreme god kings, and they immediately shrieked out painfully. In just a few seconds, 2 of them were burnt to a crisp, while the other 5 were heavily injured as they charged out of the sea of flames. Sheng Man's cloak had been burnt off, revealing her appearance. She had gray hair and a face filled with wrinkles and wounds. Currently, she was enveloped by a gentle glow from a bronze mirror on her chest. From the pulse the mirror emitted, it was clearly a defensive god artifact. However, even though she was protected by a god artifact, she had been burnt and quite injured. The lizard is at the 7th heavenly layer of infinite prime at the very least, or even the 8th heavenly layer. That is late infinite prime. It's impossible for such a powerful existence to appear in the Neptunian divine palace, Zhu Wen cried out. He clashed with the lizard, and he was blown away by a single swat, causing him to vomit blood. His god artifact armor had dulled as well. Their strengths were on 2 completely different levels. I understand now. This lizard didn't come out from outside. Instead, it's a natural spirit that was gradually born from the power of flames in the lava over the years. This seems to be the 7th floor. Jian Chen looked at the rather familiar landscape as his eyes gradually lit up. It really is the 7th floor. I never thought the cosmic movement talisman would bring me here. Very soon, Jian Chen confirmed his location. The light in his eyes flickered before he suddenly looked at the entrance to the 8th floor. Cold killing intent immediately filled his eyes. Swish! In the next moment, Jian Chen shot off. Light flickered around him as he seemed to turn into a bolt of lightning, flying towards the entrance to the 8th floor as quickly as he could. Jian Chen was so fast that he could cross 10,000 kilometers in seconds. Before long, he had crossed through the mountains and rivers and arrived at the entrance to the 8th floor. At this very moment, a supreme god king in damaged armor that had been charred arrived on the 7th floor from the 8th floor. Clearly, he had escaped by a hair's breadth from the 8th floor. When he fled to the 7th floor, he was already heavily injured and extremely weakened. He was almost incapacitated. The Supreme God King did not seem to feel any pain. When he saw that he had successfully escaped from the volcanic world, he could not help but laugh aloud as if he had just survived a great disaster. This was because he had personally witnessed so many Supreme God Kings far more powerful than himself die to the lizard without being able to put up a fight at all. He felt extremely fortunate about being able to escape from the danger. However, at this moment, a cold light flashed. A sword suddenly appeared and stabbed towards his forehead with lightning speed. Chapter 2145, Sitting Ducks. The Supreme God King paled in fright. He had just escaped death, so he had let his guard down. Coupled with how he had never expected an ambush here, he could not dodge the sudden attack at all. Spurt! The sword shone like the stars as it pierced through the forehead of the Supreme God King with lightning speed, dispersing his soul on the spot. Jian Chen slowly drew out the 9-star sword of heavenly ways as he looked at the corpse coldly. He showed no pity. He also removed the Supreme God King's space ring. It's time for me to collect some interest after being hunted down for so long, Jian Chen muttered. As he said that, the 9-star sword of heavenly ways shone with intense starlight, and 4 stars seemed to appear. Then he slashed at the entrance before him. Spurt! When Jian Chen slashed out, a Supreme God King just happened to come down from the 8th floor like he was fleeing for his life. Before he could even react, he had been beheaded. Immediately, blood splashed into the air. Jian Chen, the Supreme God King, roared out in fury and surprise. Before his soul could escape, Jian Chen's second strike descended and cleaved his head in half, dispersing his soul as well. Regardless of how injured the Supreme God Kings were, they still possessed some battle prowess, but every single one of them believed that they had escaped from the lizard when they arrived on the 7th floor successfully. They could not help but feel fortunate from escaping a disaster, so they would completely drop their guards at that moment. However, Jian Chen was ready to deal his strongest attack at any time, so his action of sitting and waiting for them to come to him was extremely effective. A few seconds later, another person came down from the 8th floor. Jian Chen used the same trick, giving no time for the opponent to react or prepare. His sword stabbed out with lightning speed, directly piercing the person's forehead and killing him on the spot. However, a total of 4 people had come this time. The 3 other people discovered Jian Chen when he killed the first person. "Jian Chen, how dare you still remain here?" a burly man bellowed out. In particular, when he saw the person Jian Chen had killed, he immediately became furious. He roared out, "You've actually killed the successor of the solitary sword lineage, Gong Zheng. The solitary sword lineage will never spare you." Jian Chen was surprised. Because there was no one he was familiar with on the 8th floor, he had been guarding this place, and he would attack whoever that came down. He had no time to discern who they were at all. Only after glancing now did he discover in surprise that the Supreme God King he had killed just now was actually one of the 8 people who tried to hunt him down before. It was the successor of the solitary sword lineage, Gong Zheng. Gong Zheng's dazzling golden clothes were tattered, having been burnt black now. Even his entire body had almost become completely charred. "Bai Yi, Legunter, do it," a burly man called out. He was Jia Na, who had protected Gong Zheng, Bai Yi, and Sanying earlier. With that, the 2 other people attacked Jian Chen at the same time. Bai Yi's eyes were cold. He held his iron pole and attacked Jian Chen as hard as he could without any hesitation. Jia Na also drew his god artifact and struck out as soon as possible. Apart from Legunter, all 3 of them had god artifacts. Legunter only used a supreme quality saint artifact. It was 3 against 1, so Jia Na's side possessed an absolute advantage in numbers. Moreover, Jia Na ranked within the top 100 of the God King's throne, so he was extremely powerful. However, all 3 of them were like Gong Zheng. They had been injured on the 8th floor, and their skin had been charred black, so they were naturally unable to unleash their peak strength. Jian Chen was at his peak condition, and with the 9-star sword of heavenly ways, his battle prowess had been greatly amplified. With these advantages and disadvantages, not only did Jian Chen put up a fight against the 3 of them, but he also seemed to gain the upper hand. Spurt. After a few clashes, Jia Na vomited blood, and his face became extremely pale. He had not been injured by Jian Chen. Instead, he had directly been smacked till he had half a life left by the lizard's tail before. Now that he had to fight Jian Chen, it affected his wounds, causing them to worsen. "Let's go." Jia Na called out. He did not dwell on the battle and fled into the distance. "Running won't be that easy." Jian Chen snorted coldly. He shot out a strand of profound sword chi, which caught up with Jia Na instantly. It entered his soul. Jia Na cried out and fell from the sky. His soul had almost collapsed, so he became so heavily injured that he could not even flee. At the same time, 4 huge stars conjured from Jian Chen's 9-star sword of heavenly ways, colliding with Bai Yi's metal pole. Bai Yi grunted as the flaps between his thumb and index on both hands ripped apart. His fingers shattered, and the metal pole flew out of his hands. Jian Chen's sword did not run out of power after knocking away Bai Yi's god artifact. It plunged into Bai Yi's head. Bai Yi died just like that. Without Jia Na and Bai Yi's obstruction and with his own injuries, Legunter naturally failed to last much longer, and he was slain by Jian Chen very soon. Afterwards, Jian Chen arrived before Jia Na, who had collapsed on the ground. Jia Na was crying out as he clutched his head. Jian Chen ended his life mercilessly. Jian Chen took Jia Na's space ring and picked up his god artifact. The god artifact was a sword as wide as a hand. Jian Chen also discovered a thumb-sized bead on Jia Na's corpse. It was also a god artifact. These 2 god artifacts should have been for both offense and defense. It looks like Jia Na could only use one of them, as he was too heavily injured, Jian Chen murmured before picking up Bai Yi's metal pole as well, tossing it all into the Inata tower. After thinking of something, Jian Chen suddenly took out the space rings he had obtained. After rummaging through them, he took out over a dozen formation discs altogether. Then he made his way onto the 8th floor carefully and set up all the formation discs at the entrance with lightning speed. Jian Chen did not even glance at his handiwork once he was done. He turned around and returned to the 7th floor. The formation discs were either for offense or defense, and they were of impressive grades. With so many formation discs placed together by Jian Chen, it formed a barrier at the entrance to the 8th floor, preventing anyone from coming down. God damn it, who's so despicable that they've blocked the way down? Jian Chen vaguely heard furious roars. He felt extremely elated. Several Supreme God Kings paled in anger when they saw the barrier created from the formation discs on the 8th floor. Let's band together and destroy these formations. They can't last for long against us, a Supreme God King said in a hurry. However, just when they were about to take action, the lizard glanced over. Its tongue shot out and dragged a Supreme God King into its mouth. The other Supreme God Kings all paled in fright as they fled in all directions. There's no way down. Go up, quick, to the 9th floor. Immediately, the Supreme God Kings who originally fled towards the 7th floor all charged towards the 9th. All the Supreme God Kings gathered on the 8th floor of the Neptunian Divine Palace fled for their lives. They all unleashed their greatest speed, and some of them directly ignited their essence blood, paying a heavy price to use a secret technique. They fled towards the 9th floor desperately. The lizard from the lava was just too powerful. It was at the 7th heavenly layer of infinite prime at the very least, or even at the 8th heavenly layer. It was not too far away from chaotic prime, so they could not deal with it. Even Zhu Wan, who ranked second on the God King's throne with battle prowess great enough to kill regular infinite primes, was no stronger than an ant before the lizard. Zhu Wan, Xing Man, and the Supreme God King with the laws of death also fled for their lives. They used secret techniques to erupt with terrifying speed. They were at the very front, drawing closer and closer to the entrance of the 9th floor. At this moment, joy appeared in their eyes. They could basically already see themselves reaching the 9th floor and escaping with their lives. However, at this moment, a tremendous volcano flew through the air. The lizard had struck a huge volcano into the air with a sweep of its tail. Perhaps out of pure coincidence or otherwise, the volcano just happened to land where the entrance to the 9th floor was, blocking it completely and cutting off everyone's path of escape. No! The Supreme God Kings behind all bellowed out in regret at this sight. Despair filled their hearts. If it were some other time, they could just smash through the volcano with their strength. Even if the rock of the volcano was extremely tough, enough to be used as a material, they could still smash through it as long as they had time. But now, there was a terrifyingly powerful lizard here. They had no time. The lizard would probably kill them all off before they could clear the obstacle. Not only were they unable to go to the 7th floor now, but they also could not go to the 9th floor either. They had truly become trapped on the 8th floor, reduced to sitting ducks. Zhu Yi gritted his teeth as madness filled his eyes. He called out, "Since we can't escape, let's fight it out. There's only death for us if we fight alone, but there are several hundred of us and several dozen god artifacts. Let's fall into formation and fight to the death. It's not impossible for us to survive." Jian Chen no longer paid any more attention to the situation on the 8th floor. He was about to leave the 7th floor right now and fly towards the 6th. Jian Chen had called out Heya. He followed Jian Chen's side closely and would give him directions from time to time. "I can sense them. They're over there. Master, the people you told me to memorize seem to be together." Heya pointed in one direction as he said that to Jian Chen after arriving on the 5th floor. Well done, Heya. Jian Chen was in high spirits. His entire mood seemed to get much better. Immediately, he hurried off in the direction Heya pointed in. Several million kilometers away on the fifth floor, Ming Dong, Adriana, Shui Yunlan, Rui Di, and Ji Yi were gathered together. I never would have thought that Ming Dong actually comes from the Tianyuan continent. I heard from the seniors in our clan that our sect of dragons and phoenixes was originally located on the Tianyuan continent before emigrating to the Beast God continent with the Beast God. The Tianyuan continent is our ancestral lands. Rui Di looked at Ming Dong excitedly, and his gaze was especially warm. Ming Dong, tell us about the Tianyuan continent and the Beast God continent. What's the situation there right now? Ji Yi looked at Ming Dong with shining eyes. She was filled with curiosity. It's not the time to talk about this right now. Let's find a way to help my brother instead, Ming Dong said sternly. His face was sunken and serious. He could not lighten up no matter what. Suddenly, a flash of light shot through the air like a bolt of lightning in the night sky that only had the glow of the moon. It shone with blinding light along the way, directly approaching Ming Dong and so on. Ming Dong's worries immediately vanished when he saw the light. He became surprised and overjoyed. Shui Yunlan and Adriana were clearly relieved as well when they saw the light. They were all supreme god kings, so their senses were extremely powerful. As soon as the streak of light had appeared, they recognized that Jian Chen was within it. However, when they saw that there was only Jian Chen and Heya, they became perplexed and curious. Jian Chen, where are the supreme god kings who were chasing you? Ming Dong went up to receive him warmly. He looked behind Jian Chen cautiously as he felt extremely confused. They're all on the 8th floor. Jian Chen hid nothing and told them about the lizard from the lava. Everyone's faces changed slightly when they heard about the lizard. Clearly, they were stunned. Ming Dong, I never thought you would have already reached the level of supreme god kings in just a few short centuries, and you have so many god artifacts with you. It looks like you've been doing pretty well in the saints' world in the past few years, so much for all my worries. Jian Chen studied Ming Dong before glancing at the 5 divine generals behind him. He felt happy for Ming Dong from the bottom of his heart. Only now did the two brothers have time to catch up after being separated for hundreds of years. How can I be compared to you? My strength has increased so rapidly because I had endless amounts of cultivation resources in all those years. Coupled with a powerful legacy and various forms of nurturing, it's impossible for me to not become powerful. I am unlike you, who roamed the saints' world alone and made it into the ranks of the supreme god kings in such a short amount of time while having no background at all. Moreover, you're probably just an early god king right now, while I'm a late god king. I've basically reached the end of this cultivation realm, while you still have a lot of room to cover. I'm far worse compared to you, Ming Dong said gloomily. Jian Chen patted Ming Dong's shoulder, and after exchanging some simple pleasantries, he looked at Shui Yunlan and asked, Protector Shui, why are you in the Neptunian Divine Palace? Where's my sister? Have you brought her in with you? Her Majesty is very well right now. She's in a safe place and has not come into the Neptunian Divine Palace with me, replied Shui Yunlan. Her voice was still cold and emotionless, but her gaze towards Jian Chen was mixed. She could not help but think about just how puny of an existence Jian Chen was back on the Tianyuan continent. Even an ant was greater than him. Yet now, after a few short centuries, Jian Chen had arrived at the same level as her, which shocked Shui Yunlan deeply. She even felt like this was unrealistic. Jian Chen's talent is monstrous, and his rate of growth is just too fast. In just 300 to 400 years, he has grown from a mortal to a god king, and his battle prowess is so great that he can kill supreme god kings from the god king's throne as an early god king. He hasn't reached the end of the path as a god king yet, so there's a lot of room for growth in the future. With his current battle prowess, I'll be nowhere near his opponent once he reaches peak god king. thought Shui Yunlan. Her feelings were mixed as a gleam of light flickered through her cold pupils. But why does he have to be a part of the immortals' world and a successor of the sword sect of Violet Heavens? The esteemed ice goddess was injured by the grand exalt of the sword sect of Violet Heavens in the past, and she still hasn't recovered. Her situation is unknown. She hasn't even paid any attention to the traitors of the Ice Goddess Hall. Jian Chen is still an enemy of our Ice Goddess Hall in the end. I wonder if exposing my identity and throwing the Snow Goddess into constant danger to help Jian Chen was the right decision or not, sigh. Whatever. What Mo Tianyun said in the past was not unreasonable. Now that the Ice Goddess Hall faces an unprecedented danger, almost facing death, is there still any use for me to dwell on these grievances? We don't even know whether the Ice Goddess Hall can survive. The priority is for Her Majesty to recover her strength. Only once Her Majesty has recovered her peak strength can we turn the situation around. Shui Yunlan sighed inside. Not only did Jian Chen's rate of growth amaze her, but it also threatened her and filled her with much unease. Jian Chen, on the other hand, became disappointed after learning that Changyang Mingyue had not entered the Neptunian Divine Palace with Shui Yunlan. At this moment, he could not help but think of Changyang Mingyue's familiar face. His childhood memories flashed before him like a fountain as if they were completely new. Even after several centuries, he could still remember them like they had happened yesterday. He could clearly remember that once he was determined to be a cripple who could not cultivate during his youth, his status in the Changyang clan had fallen from a dazzling star to someone that even regular servants could scoff at and harass whenever they wanted to. During that time, his father, Changyang Ba, had grown cold on him. In the huge Changyang clan, there was only his sister, Changyang Mingyue, who cared for him the most back then aside from his mother. She took care of him right down to the smallest details, thinking about everything for him. In the eyes of many people, this relationship as siblings might have been something that could not be any more ordinary. However, to Jian Chen, who had experienced a life as an orphan, it warmed his heart and touched him deeply. He remembered it and was captivated by it, so it became a memory firmly embedded in the depths of his soul such that he would never forget about it. Ever since he separated from Changyang Mingyue on the Tianyuan continent, Jian Chen had never met her again. He longed for his sister. Jian Chen, do you come from the Tianyuan continent? At this moment, Rui Di asked Jian Chen nervously as he stared at him enthusiastically. A gleam of light immediately flashed through Jian Chen's eyes when Rui Di mentioned the Tianyuan continent. There should have only been a handful of people who knew about the Tianyuan continent in the Saints' world, so how did the person before him know? Perhaps. You are. Jian Chen looked at Rui Di. We're Rui Di and Ji Yi from the sect of dragons and phoenixes. The sect of dragons and phoenixes was the dragon and phoenix clans that the winged tiger god brought to the Saints' world from the beast god continent. Adriana introduced Rui Di and Ji Yi to Jian Chen. What? You're the dragon and phoenix clans that left the beast god continent in the past. Jian Chen was extremely surprised when he learnt who Rui Di and Ji Yi were. But soon after, he became overjoyed, and a thought crossed his head silently. He had just been worrying about how to find Rui Jin and Hong Lian's clansmen that had left the Tianyuan continent 1,000,000 years ago in the vast Saints' world. He had never thought he would come across the people from the sect of dragons and phoenixes out of pure coincidence during his trip to the Neptunian Divine Palace. This filled him with both surprise and happiness. He was in high spirits. At this moment, Adriana suddenly smiled mysteriously and said to Jian Chen, look at who this is. As she said that, a divine hall appeared in her hand, which was thrown into the air gently by Adriana. The divine hall suddenly expanded in the air, becoming several hundred meters long and wide in a single instance. With a deep thud, it landed on the ground gently and kicked up some dust. Jian Chen looked at the divine hall in confusion and curiosity. He had no idea what Adriana had planned. At this moment, the divine hall's door opened slightly. Afterwards, a woman in a purple dress with a zither walked out. She was extremely pretty, and she had an otherworldly bearing, just like a goddess. Jian Chen seemed to become petrified the moment he saw the woman. He suddenly froze up as disbelief flooded his confident, handsome face. Moor. But in the next moment, Jian Chen suddenly cried out. He charged over emotionally and embraced Shangguan Moor tightly. Jian Chen, I knew you'd still be alive. Shangguan Moor also struggled to keep calm when she saw Jian Chen. She was elated as she smiled faintly. She stowed the zither of the demonic cry away and embraced Jian Chen gently, pressing her head against his chest. As the saying went, absence makes the heart grow fonder. After being separated for dozens of years, Jian Chen and Shangguan Moor had been constantly worried for each other's safety in the danger-ridden saints' world. Now that they were reunited, their repressed feelings of yearning immediately erupted like geysers. Moor, how have you been in the Taoist sect of divine sound in the past few years? Has it been hard? Jian Chen said softly as his voice was filled with care. Brother, there's a kid called Jun Kong who's eyeing sister-in-law. You better be careful of him. He's not weak, also a supreme god king, and he has a god artifact, Ming Dong, who sat on the side and consumed god-tier pills to heal, suddenly said to Jian Chen. Jun Kong. Jian Chen murmured as he looked at Shangguan Moor. He was questioning her. Jun Kong's master is one of the 4 ancestors of the Taoist sect of divine sound. He's also the person with the greatest talent so far in the entire sect. He did indeed long for me in the past. When I came to the Neptunian Divine Palace this time, Jun Kong was sent by the ancestors to protect me. Shangguan Moor told Jian Chen about the matters of Jun Kong without hiding anything. Brother, don't blame me for not warning you. That kid called Jun Kong wants to kill you, Ming Dong said as he recovered. Chapter 2148, Another Secret, He Actually Wants to Kill Me? Jian Chen was surprised by that, but he soon sneered. He looked at Shangguan Moor and asked sternly, Moor, Jun Kong is your senior brother. If I end up conflicting with your senior, what will you do? Although Jun Kong's master has shown me kindness through guiding me, I've already helped out Jun Kong when Ming Dong wanted to kill him last time. I did not help him last time because he came from the Taoist sect of divine sound. Rather, it was to return his master's kindness. As a result, I will not object if you want to kill Jun Kong, Shangguan Mui said without any hesitation at all. However, then she hesitated slightly and looked at Jian Chen with worry. She continued, however, Jun Kong's master is a chaotic prime after all, and his master's wife is also one of the 4 ancestors of the Taoist sect of divine sound. If you really do end up killing Jun Kong, you'll probably cause quite a lot of trouble. So what if he's a chaotic prime? I've offended so many supreme god kings in the Neptunian divine palace, and many of the organizations behind all these god kings are far more powerful than the Taoist sect of divine sound. I'm not even afraid of these people, so why would I fear Jun Kong? Jian Chen said fearlessly. Shangguan Moor then thought about why Jian Chen had been hunted down by all the supreme god kings in the Neptunian divine palace. She could not help but ask, what's up with the girl? Is she really crucial to obtaining the Neptunian divine palace? The girl is called Xiao Man. She's the descendant of the previous master of the Neptunian divine palace, so she carries the bloodline of the previous master. Jian Chen hid nothing and told everyone about Xiao Man. Everyone gathered here were not outsiders. Even Rui Di and Ji Yi were clansmen of the Dragon and Phoenix clans that had left the Beast God continent in the past, so Jian Chen trusted them very much. Moreover, Xiao Man's matters had already spread throughout the entire Neptunian divine palace. With how special her bloodline was, all that was needed was some thought, and it would not be difficult to reach this conclusion. It was no secret at all, so Jian Chen had no reason to hide it. As soon as they heard that Xiao Man was the previous master's descendant, Rui Di and Ji Ye's faces changed. They seemed to have become excited. On the other hand, Adriana, Shui Yunlan, and Ming Dong remained indifferent. Seeing Rui Di and Ji Ye's expressions, Jian Chen's gaze turned slightly cold. He said, I already have an agreement with Xiao Man. I will help her take back the Neptunian Divine Palace and reclaim her ancestors' belongings. Jian Chen's words were clearly a warning, stating his stance out in the open, where even if Rui Di and Ji Yi were from the Dragon and Phoenix clans, he would still be willing to take them on if they wanted the Neptunian Divine Palace. Rui Di and Ji Ye's faces changed slightly when they heard that. After a short moment of silence, Rui Di said to Jian Chen, the Neptunian Divine Palace is extremely important. Ji Yi and I have come under the orders of the seniors to obtain the Neptunian Divine Palace through all means possible. However, since we share the same homeland, we're not outsiders, and that girl called Xiao Man has some ties with you. If the girl gains control over the Neptunian Divine Palace, it might be good news to us. A gleam of light flashed through Adriana's eyes, and she stared at Rui Di and Ji Yi sharply. She said, since your seniors treat the Neptunian Divine Palace with so much importance, they must know just how severe the matters that the Neptunian Divine Palace tie into are. Obtaining the Neptunian Divine Palace isn't really a good matter for your sect of dragons and phoenixes. After all, your sect has only existed for 1,000,000 years. You don't have the heritage or strength to keep the Neptunian Divine Palace. Jian Chen was also surprised. He could not contain his curiosity, so he asked, just what other matters does this Neptunian Divine Palace tie into? Shui Yunlan, Ming Dong, and Shangguan Mu'er all looked at Adriana curiously as well. Adriana became solemn, I only heard about this from a hall elder accidentally after I returned to the God clan. I only know that the Neptunian Divine Palace seems to be related to the war between the Saints' world and the Immortals' world. I don't know about the exact details. The reason why the Samsaric Grand Exalt of the Immortals' world destroyed the Neptunian Divine Palace was also because of this. Adriana sighed gently when she reached there. She stared at the world within the Neptunian Divine Palace blankly and sighed, that's because the Neptunian Divine Palace was directly responsible for an intense battle between two Grand Exalts. According to the records of our God clan, ever since one of the 7 Grand Exalts of our Saints' world, the Grand Exalt of Ancient Ways, clashed with the Samsaric Immortal Exalt, he has never appeared again. Many peak experts in the Saints' world had once stated that the Grand Exalt of Ancient Ways was already dead. However, the Samsaric Grand Exalt of the Immortals' world was also heavily injured. As he fled back to the Immortals' world, he was intercepted by the Blood Tier Grand Exalt. In the end, his body was destroyed, and he returned to the Immortals' world with just his soul. His soul then entered Samsara. Jian Chen was deeply stunned after hearing this. Originally, he had thought that the Samsaric Immortal Exalt had destroyed the Taoist sect of Neptunia simply because of the war between the two worlds. He had never thought that there was more to it. Although Jian Chen was unable to understand the true reason, he had realized that the Neptunian Divine Palace was not as simple as just a high-quality god artifact from what Adriana had said. Rui Di and Ji Yi were also stern. If Adriana was telling the truth, it really would not have been a positive matter if their sect of dragons and phoenixes had obtained the Neptunian Divine Palace. Everyone continued to dwell on the topic on the Neptunian Divine Palace. A while later, Shui Yunlan suddenly arrived beside Jian Chen and said emotionlessly, Jian Chen, come with me. As she said that, she flew off into the distance. Jian Chen stared at Shui Yunlan's back doubtfully. After squeezing Shangguan Mu'er's soft, smooth hand, he said, I'll be right back. All right, Shangguan Mu'er nodded gently as tenderness filled her enchanting eyes. 100 kilometers away, Shui Yunlan formed a barrier out of ice that enveloped the two of them. She stared at Jian Chen coldly and said, has the space ring that the 5th prince obtained from the Grand Prime statue on the 12th floor ended up in your hands? It has. The space ring is with me. Do you want it? Jian Chen's eyes narrowed as he secretly grew cautious. I had an agreement with the fifth prince. I would help him stop the people who wanted to attack him and make time for him, while all the cultivation resources he obtained would be mine. Shui Yunlan stared at Jian Chen. Jian Chen frowned when he heard that. That's between you and the fifth prince. What's it got to do with me? Since I obtained the space ring, it belongs to me now. Do you plan on getting me to hold up the fifth prince's side of the deal for him? Jian Chen had no good impression of Shui Yunlan. Ignoring the fact that she had basically committed a huge sin by ending an entire era on the Tianyuan continent, just her action of freezing Rui Jin, Hong Lian, and He Yu on the icy plains was enough for Jian Chen to never forgive her. Shui Yunlan's expression did not change at all. Her eyes remained cold and emotionless. She said icily, "Of course it's got something to do with you. Do you know why I've come to the Neptunian Divine Palace? Do you know why I assisted the fifth prince? All of it was for your sister." "My sister? What's wrong with my sister?" Jian Chen's expression changed when he heard her mention his sister. His eyes immediately narrowed as he stared at Shui Yunlan closely while he called out. He became extremely unsettled. Chapter 2149, Crisis of the Ice Goddess Hall. Jian Chen was just far too concerned for his sister. As soon as he heard Shui Yunlan mention that she had come to the Neptunian Divine Palace for her sister, he immediately jumped to the conclusion that an accident had happened to his sister, or she was hurt. A gleam of light flashed through Shui Yunlan's cold eyes when she saw Jian Chen react so violently. She said, "Don't worry, your sister is fine. She's in a very safe place." Jian Chen immediately became relieved when he heard that his sister was fine. He also gradually calmed down. He stared at Shui Yunlan as his eyes flickered with uncertainty, and he said coldly, "You said you came to the Neptunian Divine Palace all for my sister. I want to know the reason." Shui Yunlan fell silent. She looked at Jian Chen with her cold, emotionless eyes as light flickered in them slightly. Clearly, she was hesitating. Jian Chen could tell that Shui Yunlan was hesitating with a single glance, so he said, "If you don't want to tell me the truth, you won't be getting anything from me. You are very powerful, but making me stay is still difficult. As a result, if you plan on taking something from me forcefully, you better give up on that thought." As if Shui Yunlan could see how confident Jian Chen was, she sighed secretly. In the next moment, she felt helpless. Never would she have thought that the tiny figure from the Tianyuan continent who was even less than an ant back then would be bold enough to stand before her today and threaten her fearlessly. As she sighed in surprise, she also found it rather difficult to accept. After a while of silence, Shui Yunlan still ended up talking. She said with her cold voice that never changed, "Your sister is the snow goddess of the ice goddess hall. She died during a war in the past, but fortunately, her soul was not destroyed, so she was reincarnated with a sliver of her soul. The great ice goddess used her own bloodline as a medium and predicted that Her Majesty would be reincarnated in a lower world, and she correctly found which world it was. That was why I came to the Tianyuan continent under orders and took up the mission of finding Her Majesty. I waited on the Tianyuan continent for over 3 million years before finally waiting for Her Majesty to be reincarnated. Originally, I wanted to leave the Tianyuan continent with Her Majesty once her strength had reached a certain level and directly return to the Ice Goddess Hall of the Saints' World. However, Mo Tianyun, who had vanished long ago from the Tianyuan continent, reappeared at that time. Mixed feelings filled Shui Yunlan's eyes when she mentioned Mo Tianyun. Jian Chen was also surprised when he heard the name Mo Tianyun. He could not help but think about what he saw with Shangguan Mu'er when they discovered the Yinyang Saint Rock. At that time, they had obtained a dual cultivation method from Mo Tianyun, which allowed them to grasp the balancing of yin and yang. As a result, he was able to absorb the energy of the Yinyang Saint Rock successfully with Shangguan Mu'er, giving him great strength. But at that time, they had only encountered one of Mo Tianyun's clones. It was not his true body. Shui Yunlan continued, Mo Tianyun brought me news from the saints' world. I learnt that something had happened to the ice goddess Hall in the saints' world from him. Another one of the four great protectors, Wu Han, actually colluded with Nan Patian of the moon god Hall and gained control of the ice goddess Hall, and she's targeting the ice goddess. At the very beginning, I had my doubts about this matter. I did not believe it at all. However, it was also because of Mo Tianyun's warning that I became cautious. When I brought Her Majesty back to the saints' world, I did not return to the ice goddess Hall rashly. Instead, I disguised myself and investigated the ice goddess Hall's situation. When she reached there, Shui Yunlan could not help but tremble slightly. Fury rose up in her chest as her ice-cold eyes also became grim. She said coldly, I never dared to believe that Mo Tianyun's news would be true. However, Nan Patian of the moon god Hall really did collude with Wu Han and had gained control of the ice goddess Hall. Even the elders of the ice goddess Hall suffered from their hands. The ice goddess Hall has a tremendous amount of cultivation resources and a land of cultivation that is extremely suitable for Her Majesty to recover her cultivation. Originally, I only needed to take Her Majesty back to the ice goddess Hall, and her cultivation would completely recover before long with all the resources that the ice goddess Hall could offer. However, the ice goddess Hall faces a crisis right now, so I cannot take Her Majesty back, and I have to remain hidden, without exposing ourselves. We don't have enough divine crystals and heavenly resources, or any protection from major organizations, and we have to remain hidden at all times to avoid Wu Han and Nan Patian discovering our whereabouts. It's almost impossible for Her Majesty to recover under these circumstances. Shui Yunlan was gloomy. There was a hint of bitterness in her icy-cold voice. She said, the reason why I came to the Neptunian Divine Palace this time was not for the legacies. My primary reason was only to collect some cultivation resources so that I could assist Her Majesty in recovering. As a result, when I saw someone gain the recognition of a Grand Prime's legacy, I assisted him without any hesitation, only in hopes of obtaining the cultivation resources that the Grand Prime has left behind. Her Majesty is in urgent need of cultivation resources right now. After learning everything from Shui Yunlan, Jian Chen fell into silent thought. He was not surprised about his sister's identity because he had learnt that his sister was the reincarnation of someone powerful back on the Tianyuan continent. However, he did not care about this. The concern and affection his sister had shown him during his youth had already been engraved in his heart. As a result, no matter who his sister really was, it would never change her position in his heart. However, he had never thought that his sister would encounter such difficulties in the saints' world. It made his heart ache. It was not a good feeling. What are Nan Patian and Wu Han's current level of cultivation? Jian Chen's eyes turned cold slightly as he asked sternly. He had heard about Nan Patian from Fairy Hao Yu and learnt his cultivation from Fairy Hao Yu. However, that was his cultivation several 100,000 years ago. Nan Patian is a peak chaotic prime. It's said that he's only a step away from Grand Prime. As for Wu Han, she's an infinite prime. With her talent, she has probably reached the peak of infinite prime after so much time, or maybe even chaotic prime, Shui Yunlan replied seriously. Not only was Shui Yunlan the most talented out of the four protectors, but she also used to be the most powerful. However, the time she spent on the Tianyuan continent had delayed her progress. The ice goddess is one of the 7 grand exalts, so how can Nan Patian and Wu Han gain control of the ice goddess hall so easily? Jian Chen asked in doubt. Grand exalts were experts who had truly reached the apex of Grand Prime. They were sovereigns of the world, existences like the laws of the world itself. Even across the saints' world, there were only a limited number of them, so how could the ice goddess be forced to take a passive stance against a chaotic prime and an infinite prime? The ice goddess hall must be a god artifact of impressive quality, right? Doesn't it have an artifact spirit as a god artifact? Jian Chen followed up. A cold light flickered through Shui Yunlan's eyes. She replied frigidly, you're right. Not only is the Ice Goddess Hall the name of an organization, but it's also a powerful god artifact personally forged by the Ice Goddess. It's even more powerful than the Neptunian Divine Palace. As long as it's in the Ice Goddess Hall, just the artifact spirit's control over the structure would be more than enough to kill both Nan Patian and Wuhan. However, the Ice Goddess Hall has still become occupied by the enemy. What does that mean? It means that there's someone else behind Nan Patian and Wuhan. Shui Yunlan became extremely stern. Moreover, this person must be extremely powerful, enough to suppress the artifact spirit of the Divine Hall. The reason why Nan Patian and Wuhan were bold enough to turn against the Ice Goddess is extremely likely due to the support of this person. Chapter 2150, Siblings Bond. Jian Chen's heart sank slightly as he became extremely stern as well. Nan Potion's cultivation had already reached the peak of chaotic prime, and he could become a grand prime at any time, yet he still received the support of someone. Without even thinking, it must have been a grand prime. Moreover, Jian Chen predicted that if Nan Patian was really supported by someone, their cultivation would definitely not be as simple as a regular grand prime. Since a grand prime eyes your Ice Goddess Hall, it'll probably be very difficult to resolve the crisis unless the Ice Goddess personally takes action. What do you plan on doing now? Jian Chen asked. Originally, he had no ties with the Ice Goddess Hall at all. The fate of the Ice Goddess Hall would have nothing to do with him. However, Jian Chen had to get involved now since this related to his sister's safety. Shui Yunlan was gloomy. There was some worry in her cold eyes. She sighed gently. Perhaps it's due to our cultivation method, but everyone at the Ice Goddess Hall has an extremely cold personality. Coupled with the presence of the Ice Goddess, one of the 7 grand exalts of the Saints' world, our status was supreme in the Saints' world. As a result, we never befriended any other major organization in the Saints' world. Now that the Ice Goddess Hall faces a crisis, we can't get any reinforcements at all, so probably the only path left for me is for Her Majesty to recover as soon as possible. A gleam of light flashed through Jian Chen's eyes, and he asked curiously, if my sister recovers, can you change the situation that the Ice Goddess Hall currently faces? If Her Majesty recovers, she'll be able to resolve the entire matter regardless of who supports Nan Patian and regardless of how grave the situation our Ice Goddess Hall faces is, Shui Yunlan said with absolute confidence. She felt respect from the bottom of her heart towards both the Ice Goddess and Snow Goddess. Jian Chen instead fell silent when he saw Shui Yunlan's absolute confidence. He could tell that his sister was extremely powerful from what Shui Yunlan had said, powerful to the point where she did not fear grand primes at all. He felt happy and worried at the same time. He felt happy and overjoyed for his sister because of her great strength, but he was worried about whether she would still be able to recognize him after recovering her strength. Maybe, she would cease to be his sister. Jian Chen slowly took out space ring after space ring after a while of silent thought. Jian Chen placed almost 10 space rings on the ground. They were his spoils of battle, including the Grand Prime space ring from the 5th Prince. Jian Chen had obtained far more space rings than this in the Neptunian Divine Palace, but he had tidied through them and grouped the items together before placing them all into these space rings. Afterwards, Jian Chen began to rummage through each space ring, taking out many heavenly resources that could increase cultivation in various divine crystals. He placed them all in a single space ring. In the end, he took out the space ring from the Grand Prime statue and took out thumb-sized crystals that shone with 5-colored light. He moved them all into that one space ring. 5-colored divine crystals. Shui Yunlan could not help but call out when she saw the crystals. Her cold eyes no longer remained calm. She had become overjoyed. But very soon, she calmed down. She stared at Jian Chen with mixed feelings. She had never thought that there would be a day when she would need Jian Chen's assistance. Jian Chen did not glance at Shui Yunlan again. He silently moved the items into the space ring and said, "There are over 6,000 five-colored divine crystals in the Grand Prime space ring. I'll keep 1,000 of them, and the rest will go to my sister. There are a total of 5 heavenly resources. I'm certain that they're all God tier, but I can't tell what grade they are. I'll keep 2 stalks for myself and leave 3 to my sister. Moreover, there are some pills that can increase cultivation and some divine crystals I obtained from killing other god kings in the Neptunian divine palace. As for the fire divine crystals, I collected them from the bottom of the lava. Originally, I planned on exchanging them for 5-colored divine crystals to pay for the fees of teleportation formations across planes, but since I've already obtained quite a lot of 5-colored divine crystals from the Grand Prime space ring, I obviously don't need as many of them anymore. A fire divine crystal can be exchanged for 10 supreme quality divine crystals of the same size. My sister practices a cultivation method that's ice-oriented, so the fire divine crystals will be useless to her. Give them to her after you exchange them. I collected quite a lot of fire divine crystals from the bottom of the lava, so I'll give 80% of them to her in hopes that she can recover some strength sooner. I'll keep the remaining 20% for myself." Jian Chen tidied the items as he spoke. He only handed the space ring to Shui Yunlan after organizing everything. Shui Yunlan experienced a multitude of emotions as she stared at the space ring. In the past, she had never thought that this person who was not even as significant as an ant would give her so much help. Accepting the space ring from Jian Chen, she sent in the senses of her soul. When she personally saw the mountainous piles of cultivation resources, her body immediately quivered. At that moment, she could not help but tremble in excitement despite her mental fortitude. Over 5,000 glimmering 5-colored divine crystals, several hundred blocks of supreme quality divine crystal, 3 stalks of high-grade god-tier heavenly resources, and over 100 million fire divine crystals. The items within the tiny space ring were enough for any infinite prime to become green with envy. This was a shocking fortune that could make infinite primes lose all rationality. Fantastic! Fantastic! With these cultivation resources, even if it won't be enough for Her Majesty to recover to her peak condition, it's more than enough for her to become an infinite prime successfully. Shui Yunlan was extremely excited and elated. Oh right. Jian Chen, do you have any method to find Mo Tianyun? Mo Tianyun is very powerful, a primordial realm expert at the very least. He also has grievances with Nan Patian, so if we can work with Mo Tianyun, we'll become much more powerful, Shui Yunlan asked again. Jian Chen shook his head, I have no method of communicating with Senior Mo Tianyun. If you want to find him through me, you'll be disappointed. Jian Chen continued, I'll go ask Ming Dong and see if he can do anything about the crisis of the Ice Goddess Hall. Jian Chen did whatever he could for the sake of his sister's safety in hopes of being able to help her. Don't go asking Ming Dong. It'll be useless, Shui Yunlan shook her head. She seemed to think of something, and she sighed gently. It's extremely likely for Ming Dong to be. Anyway, Ming Dong's background is very powerful. If he can get the experts of the Heavenly Palace of Bishing to take action, they might be able to help my sister, Jian Chen said in thought. This had to do with his sister's safety. As long as he could help his sister, he would do anything no matter what it was. Ming Dong can use the authority of the Grand Exalt. The other Supreme God Kings might have no idea about his true identity, but Adriana and I know it clearly. If it were someone else who faced the same situation, Ming Dong might be able to grant them protection through the power of the Heavenly Palace of Bishing with his identity and status. However, it won't work with our Ice Goddess Hall, said Shui Yunlan. Jian Chen was surprised, do you have past grievances? Shui Yunlan nodded, very long ago, there was indeed some conflicts of interest between our Ice Goddess Hall and the Heavenly Palace of Bishing. It happened very long ago, so long ago that the 4 protectors did not even exist back then for our Ice Goddess Hall. I heard this from a conversation between the ice goddess and the snow goddess when I served them in the past. Moreover, I learned from the snow goddess that Her Majesty once competed with the First Majesty of the heavenly palace of Bisheng for a unique treasure, resulting in an intense battle. At that time, the First Majesty of the heavenly palace of Bisheng's cultivation lacked slightly in comparison to the snow goddess, so she suffered defeat in the end. The First Majesty was restrained on an icy plain by the snow goddess and only broke free 3 years later. Now, the snow goddess still hasn't recovered her memories or cultivation. It's already extremely fortunate for us if the people from the heavenly palace of Bisheng don't add insult to injury, so asking them for help is even more impossible. It looks like in the current situation, only Senior Mo Tianyun can assist my sister, Jian Chen sighed gently. He also felt helpless as he secretly worried for his sister. Although he still had ties with Tai Tai in the God clan, Shui Yunlan had fallen out with the greatest God king of the God clan, Adriana, back on the Tian Yuan continent. It was not a very plausible option for them to seek help from the God clan. But I don't know how to find Mo Tianyun either, Jian Chen stated his frustration. Shui Yunlan looked at Jian Chen as the light in her eyes flickered. She said, "There's no need to find him. I think he'll come to look for you at a certain time. Your identity will be exposed very soon. Once the people from the Ice Goddess Hall receive news, my sister will be in constant danger. Since the only person who can help my sister is Senior Mo Tianyun now, we can't just sit and wait for Senior Mo Tianyun to come by himself. We better think of some ideas to find Mo Tianyun sooner. I'll go ask Rui Di and Ji of the sect of dragons and phoenixes and see if they can help us or not," said Jian Chen before turning around and leaving. He went to find Rui Di and Ji to ask about the ancient winged tiger god. According to our seniors, after the winged tiger god brought our clansmen to the saints' world, he did not stick around for long and left. He rarely appeared after that. This is all we know about the winged tiger god. We know nothing else, said Rui Di. The light in Ji Ye's eyes flickered. She looked at Jian Chen, Rui Di, and I don't know much about the winged tiger god. If you want to learn more, you're welcome to visit our sect of dragons and phoenixes. Our seniors know more. Afterwards, Jian Chen conversed some more with Rui Di and Ji Yi, obtaining the precise location of the sect of dragons and phoenixes from them. At the same time, he learned of the reason why Shangguan Muri had come to the Neptunian divine palace this time. How much longer does the zither of the demonic cry need before its artifact spirit awakens? Jian Chen looked at Shangguan Muri. The artifact spirit of the zither of the demonic cry had a direct correlation to Shangguan Muri's future, so he cared about this very much. There is indeed a mysterious power that can allow the artifact spirit to recover quickly on the 12th floor. The zither of the demonic cry already absorbed quite a lot of it on the 12th floor before, so it has recovered by quite a lot. Looking at it now, I probably need another half a month, and the artifact spirit should completely awaken, said Shangguan Muri. Her eyes shone with eagerness. A mysterious power that can allow the artifact spirit to recover, Jian Chen murmured softly as if he was in thought. Excitement flickered through his eyes. Clearly, he was deeply interested in this mysterious power. The battle between the Supreme God Kings and the gigantic lizard probably still hasn't ended. Let's rest for a few more days before going up, Jian Chen said to Shangguan Muri. Shangguan Muri nodded, she had no objections. Afterwards, Jian Chen looked at Ming Dong, Adriana, Shui Yunlan, Rui Di, and Ji Yi. He said, everyone, I've agreed to help Xiao Man take back her ancestors' Neptunian divine palace, but there are still many obstacles in the future. As a result, I hope you can assist me. Once the matter is completed, you will have my deep gratitude. Jian Chen, don't be so polite between the two of us. Your matters are also mine. If you need my strength, you just need to tell me, Ming Dong laughed aloud and agreed straightforwardly. I can help you out. Anything extra will allow Her Majesty to become more powerful, Shui Yunlan also agreed. I've come under orders, so I naturally can't let you fall in danger. Otherwise, I won't be able to explain it to the war god." Adriana smiled faintly. Ruedi and Ji looked at each other. Afterwards, Ruedi said, "Ji and I can also help you out, seeing how we're from the same homeland. However, our sect of dragon and phoenixes would like 30% of all the legacies from chaotic and infinite primes you get from Xiaoman. Although our sect of dragon and phoenixes has been developing rapidly, we've only been around for 1,000,000 years. Our heritage pales in comparison to many other organizations, so we're in urgent need of various cultivation methods and battle skills that can be used to recruit people. We won't take a single portion of the cultivation resources at all," Ji added. "Alright, that's no problem. Once Xiaoman gains control over the Neptunian Divine Palace, I'll give you 30% of all the primordial realm legacies," Jian Chen agreed without any hesitation. "Jian Chen, I'll leave these people to you," Shui Yunlan said suddenly. With a wave of her hand, the group of people who she had frozen up were let out from a divine hall. These people were the god kings who followed the fifth prince, as well as Mr. Shu, who wielded a god artifact. Yun Xian, Yun Lianqing, and the other god kings of the Yun family were also among them. However, every single one of them had become an ice statue. Shui Yunlan took action and melted the frost effortlessly, releasing their seal. Now that the seal was released, the people of the Yun family and the god kings of the fifth prince regained their freedom. However, when they saw Shui Yunlan, who radiated with a cold presence and had remained encased in silver-white armor the entire time, their faces suddenly changed and became filled with surprise and fear. "Although our fifth prince hasn't obtained the complete legacy of the Grand Prime, he has obtained a space ring. The space ring must contain unimaginable wealth, so please help the fifth prince. As long as the fifth prince is alive, all the cultivation resources in the space ring will belong to you," Mr. Shu pleaded to Shui Yunlan. Naturally, they had no idea what had happened after Shui Yunlan froze them. "Hehe, you're still thinking about your fifth prince. Unfortunately, he's already dead. He died to my hands," Jian Chen, who stood to one side, sneered at Mr. Shu. Chapter 2152, Debts Resolved. Mr. Shu and so on had just been let out of Shui Yunlan's divine hall. They had just been freed. Naturally, the first person they saw was Shui Yunlan. Due to their fright, they explained to Shui Yunlan as quickly as they could before they could even notice the surrounding situation. They had personally witnessed Shui Yunlan's strength on the 12th floor. They were afraid that the fifth prince's flight during the chaos would make Shui Yunlan misunderstand, which would lead to their deaths. As a result, they failed to discover Jian Chen. Only when Jian Chen's voice rang out did Mr. Shu and the others discover in surprise that the Jian Chen that they loathed was also here. "Jian Chen, why are you here?" Mr. Shu's expression changed slightly. After crying out, his gaze immediately sharpened. Intense killing intent poured out without the slightest effort of concealing it. "Jian Chen, you've ruined the fifth prince's matters and prevented the fifth prince from gaining the Grand Prime's legacy. Our Sky Empire will never spare you," Mr. Shu said through gritted teeth. The fifth prince who was supposed to obtain the Grand Prime's legacy and rise up had been smacked from heaven to hell by Jian Chen, which filled Mr. Shu with hatred. Not only had Jian Chen ruined the fifth prince's future prospects, but he had also destroyed the hopes of the Sky Empire becoming an everlasting empire as well as Mr. Shu's future. As a result, Mr. Shu treated Jian Chen as his greatest enemy. "Brother Jian Chen, are you really still alive?" Yun Lianqing stared at Jian Chen in surprise and delight from behind Mr. Shu. The eyes of the young lady of the Yun family who stood beside Yun Lianqing, Yun Xian, also flickered with light. She stared directly at Jian Chen. Although she did not say anything, her face was also filled with evident delight. Jian Chen smiled and nodded at Yun Lianqing and Yun Xian. However, he did not greet the two of them. He looked at Mr. Shu and said indifferently, there are plenty of great organizations and clans in the Saints' world that I've offended in here. Your Sky Empire is only an eternal empire. You're just a puny existence compared to those peak clans. Do you think I'd be afraid? Mr. Shu's face sank. When he saw Jian Chen's fearless expression, he understood that Jian Chen really did not take the Sky Empire seriously. Afterwards, he looked at Shui Yunlan with an ugly expression. May I ask how you are related to Jian Chen? Mr. Shu had gradually calmed down. He slowly scanned the surroundings and saw all the people gathered around. Mr. Shu did not recognize Rui Di and Ji, but when he saw Ming Dong who sat on the floor as he recovered, his heart immediately sank. Jian Chen, I'll leave these people to you, Shui Yunlan said with her usual, icy tone. With that, she turned around and left, without paying any attention to Mr. Shu and so on. Mr. Shu and the remaining guards instantly paled. They could tell from her words that the terrifyingly powerful Supreme God King with the powers of ice was on the same side as Jian Chen. Excuse me. If I've seen correctly, you should have grievances with that other person. May I ask just what benefits Jian Chen has promised you such that the two of you set this grievance aside temporarily and are working with him? If you are willing to assist us, I believe we can also give you what Jian Chen has offered, Mr. Shu said to Adriana as a final ray of hope shone in his eyes. Adriana was not cold like Shui Yunlan. She looked at Mr. Shu and the others with sympathy and said, Jian Chen is the friend of the esteemed war god of our god clan. I've come under the war god's orders to assist Jian Chen. You were wrong from the beginning when you chose to become enemies with Jian Chen. What? The god clan, friend of the war god, Mr. Shu was stunned as he stared at Adriana blankly. Bitterness filled him. Only at that moment did he finally realize just how stupid of a decision it was to become enemies with Jian Chen. The matter has already developed to this point. It's useless even if you have regrets, Jian Chen said coldly. He held the 9-star sword of heavenly ways, which shone with starlight, swinging it towards them mercilessly. At that moment, Mr. Shu and the remaining guards of the 5th prince were all slain. Only the few people of the Yun family remained. The people of the Yun family looked at the corpses, and they seemed to become absent-minded. All of them could still clearly remember how Jian Chen, Kaya, and Chanlong were loathed when they first boarded the Yun family's spaceship. Especially when they learnt that the 3 of them had taken up 3 of the Yun family's spots for the entry to the Neptunian Divine Palace. Back then, most of them became displeased. At that time, none of them took Jian Chen and Kaya seriously, as they were only over-gods. However, none of them had ever thought that the Jian Chen they looked down on before would create such an astonishing disturbance in the Neptunian Divine Palace, where even the 5th prince and Mr. Shu who were powerful enough to make them suffocate ended up dying to Jian Chen's hands. All the remaining god kings of the Yun family were amazed as they looked at Jian Chen as he wielded the 9-star sword of heavenly ways right now. Brother Lianqing, the Neptunian Divine Palace hasn't been very peaceful. It's better for you to leave sooner, Jian Chen said to Yun Lianqing. The only person he knew out of all the god kings of the Yun family was Yun Lianqing. Yun Lianqing looked at Jian Chen with extremely mixed feelings. He said, the appearance of the Neptunian moon has made the Neptunian Divine Palace into a world of those supreme god kings. In reality, our Yun family wanted to leave the Neptunian Divine Palace long ago if it had not been for the 5th prince. Now that the 5th prince no longer restricts us, we will naturally be leaving soon. Brother Jian Chen, we will be leaving first. Farewell. With that, Yun Lianqing left with the god kings of the Yun family. Yun Xian walked at the very back. When she brushed past Jian Chen, she halted slightly and looked at him with mixed feelings. She said softly, "Thank you for assisting me. I will never forget about the kindness you have shown. I just hope that you can forgive me for my mistakes in the past." Yun Xian and Yun Lianqing departed. They left this place, the Neptunian Divine Palace, together, ending their trip in the Neptunian divine palace prematurely. What's your relationship with her? Shangguan Mu'er stared right at Jian Chen as if she was interrogating him. It's nothing complicated. We were just working with the Yun family. Jian Chen remained indifferent and roughly explained his deal with the Yun family. Adriana, I found this in the fifth prince's space ring. It's filled with a churning presence of life. I was wondering if this would be useful to you. At this moment, Jian Chen took out a green bead that was the size of a peach pit. As soon as the bead appeared, a dense life force permeated the surroundings. Just a breath of it would be enough for people to experience an illusion that their vitality was growing. Adriana's eyes lit up, and she said, "That's a life star core. I helped out the fifth prince before because they were willing to give me a life star core for my efforts. I never thought it would be different from what they said, where the life star core was supposed to be in their empire. Instead, the fifth prince carried it with him." Chapter 2153, The Person Behind It All, 1. A few days later, Jian Chen and the others tidied themselves up and set off once again. They headed off towards the 12th floor. Very soon, they arrived on the 7th floor. They slowed down at this moment, and they all became cautious. Even the most powerful of the group, Shui Yunlan and Adriana, did not dare to be careless. A few days have passed. I wonder what's the outcome of the battle between the Supreme God Kings and the Lizard. Jian Chen stopped sternly several 100,000 kilometers away from the entrance to the 8th floor. He stared ahead with some worry. The senses of his soul shot out and flooded the region ahead of him rapidly, enveloping a range of 1,000,000 kilometers instantly. Wait here. I'll go check on the situation up ahead, Jian Chen said to everyone. With that, he shot off with lightning speed, vanishing from before everyone. He traveled tens of thousand kilometers in a matter of seconds. Shui Yunlan, Adriana, Rui Di, Ji Yi, Shangguan Mu'er, Ming Dong and so on all remained where they were subconsciously. They gazed in Jian Chen's direction from high up in the sky as the senses of their souls appeared, surging ahead to observe what was happening there. Clearly, they all knew that Jian Chen had drawn out an extremely terrifying lizard from the lava on the 8th floor. Against a lizard that had reached late infinite prime, even the supreme god kings who ranked high up on the god king's throne did not have confidence in dealing with it. As a result, they were all extremely vigilant. There are people near the entrance, and there's quite a few of them. Let's go up and have a look as well. Adriana dispersed the senses of her soul and said to the people beside her. Afterwards, they all flew in the direction that Jian Chen had left in. Over 20 god kings sat scattered around the entrance to the 8th floor. All of them were pale and haggard. Their clothes were tattered, and even the supreme quality saint artifacts armor of some supreme god kings had been damaged or destroyed, revealing their skin that had been charred black. Clearly, all of them were heavily injured. Half of them only had half of their lives left. There were even a handful of people who seemed like they were at the gates of death, where their life force dimmed. Many of them were missing limbs. It was also because of the severity of their injuries that many of them were powerless to keep moving. They did not even have the energy to find an obscure place to heal. They could only scatter themselves at the entrance, maintaining a certain distance from one another as they healed through high-grade pills. Suddenly, a streak of light shot through the air like a comet. It covered a great distance in a split second and immediately arrived near the entrance to the 8th floor. It turned into a young man with a striking appearance. The arrival of this person alarmed the healing god kings. When they opened their eyes and saw who it was, all of their faces changed. Fury filled their eyes. Clearly, they hated this person to their bones. Jian Chen, how dare you come here, Jian Chen, you sly, despicable man. You've caused the deaths of hundreds of supreme god kings. You deserve a horrible death, you need to pay a heavy price for your actions. There is no longer anywhere safe for you in the saints' world. Half of the god kings there bellowed out. They all gritted their teeth. They hated Jian Chen from the bottom of their heart. The other half stared at Jian Chen closely. They were cautious, ready to flee at any time. Jian Chen snorted coldly in response to the furious curses. He said sternly, "In order to hunt me down, hundreds of supreme god kings went as far as to chase me from the 12th floor to the 5th floor before going back to the 8th floor. May I ask if I've ever offended you? Have I ever provoked you? Are only you lot allowed to hunt me down while I'm not supposed to do anything in retaliation? If you had just handed over the girl in a straightforward manner, would there be anyone who would continue making things difficult for you? You brought this all on yourself," said a supreme god king. Even though he was very injured, his gaze was still ice cold. "I brought this all on myself. Ha ha ha, then can't I say you brought this all on yourselves as well? If you hadn't forced me like this, and if you hadn't tried to hunt me down mercilessly, how would you have ended up like this?" Jian Chen gradually drew closer as he said that. His face was cold, and his eyes slowly shone with intense killing intent. He said frigidly, "If I lost, I would have probably been reduced to a cold corpse long ago. Unfortunately, from the looks of things, I'm not the one who lost. Instead, you lost. As a result, the people who should become corpses are you lot." Jian Chen held the 9-star sword of heavenly ways in his hand. It shone with faint starlight. As the might of the god artifact was gradually unleashed, the light shone brighter and brighter, just like a star. All the supreme god kings before him were heavily injured. Clearly, they were in no shape to retaliate. Jian Chen was ready to kill them. "Jian Chen, they can't pose a threat to you anymore, so just let them go. Don't kill them all off." At this moment, Adriana's voice rang out from behind. She, Shui Yunlan, and the others had caught up from behind. "If you let them go, the news about Her Majesty will definitely be revealed even faster." "Kill them all," Shui Yunlan said coldly. Adriana stared at Shui Yunlan furiously and said, "There must have been quite a lot of people who left the Neptunian Divine Palace in the past few days. It's impossible to hide everything that happened in here from the outsiders. Your existence has probably already reached the outside. Killing them would be useless." Adriana paused before glancing past the supreme god kings, "And I'm certain that even if you try to kill them, you can't get all of them. As long as one of them escapes, the deaths of the others will be learnt by their various clans and organizations. Major clans and organizations all stand behind these people. They might even be famed, peak organizations in the saints' world. If the people behind them learn that the supreme prodigies they nurtured with so much effort died to your hands, they'll never spare you. The entire saints' world might end up hunting you down. Many god kings have already died on the 8th floor to that lizard. Their deaths are directly related to me, so the organizations behind them will definitely come looking for me. I've already offended so many major organizations, so it won't hurt to offend a few more," said Jian Chen. "That's different." Adriana shook her head gently, "Although the deaths of those people are related to you, you still didn't kill them personally. Moreover, the fact that the Neptunian Divine Palace has been hiding such a powerful lizard in the lava has taken everyone by surprise. They weren't expecting it. As a result, as long as our god clan intervenes in this matter and speaks up for you, they might not look into it anymore. If the people from the heavenly palace of Bisheng are willing to step forward as well, it would be even better." Chapter 2154, The Person Behind It All. 2. Since these people have taken part in the fight for the Neptunian Divine Palace, there will definitely be injuries and deaths. Survival of the fittest, where the weak get preyed on, is the unchanging law of this world. If we spare these people because their backgrounds and origins are too powerful, wouldn't it mean I'd have to avoid them like the plague when I see them in the future? If the organizations behind these people offend me and target me, am I supposed to just endure it and let them off time and time again? Are they allowed to hunt me down fearlessly because they have an impressive background, while the me without a background can't kill them? Jian Chen argued coldly. His face gradually became ugly as he watched Adriana block him. Although Adriana was not as powerful as Shui Yunlan, she was far more powerful than him. If she insisted on stopping him, killing the people before him would not be easy. Jian Chen, I'm doing this because I'm thinking for you. Even if you don't plan on considering things for yourself, you need to consider things for the people behind you. If you really offend the organizations behind them too much, they'll probably look into your origins and exact revenge on the people behind you. I also know that your brother Ming Dong is from the heavenly palace of Bisheng. Ming Dong will definitely stand by your side and protect the people behind you, preventing those major organizations from acting up openly. But what about under the table? Adriana persuaded sincerely. She did not wish to see these powerless supreme god kings die to Jian Chen's hands. Petty kindness, Shui Yunlan said coldly from one side. Her heart was just as cold she seemed, completely emotionless. She was a cold-blooded person. Jian Chen sank into his thoughts after listening to Adriana's explanation. The light in his eyes flickered as he also hesitated for a moment. He thought about the Tian Yuan clan in the southern region of the distant Cloud Plain. Basically all the people who had come with him to the Saints' world in the past had settled down in the Tian Yuan clan. If the Tian Yuan clan really faced a disaster because of him, he would probably never be able to forgive himself. Alright then. For the sake of Adriana, I'll spare you lot this time. Jian Chen still listened to Adriana's suggestion after a while of thought. The injured supreme god kings were all relieved when they heard that. They had suffered heavy wounds during the battle against the gigantic lizard. Half of them had even lost the ability to flee. They would definitely be dead if Jian Chen wanted to kill them for real. Although the other half still had some energy to use forbidden techniques to escape, they would have to pay an incredible price. They really did not want to use a self-mutilating method of escape unless they had to. As a result, everyone was relieved when they heard that Jian Chen would not be killing them. At this moment, Jian Chen's eyes suddenly narrowed. He glanced past them coldly and said seriously, "Of course, I'm only sparing you this one time. If you become my enemy again in the Neptunian Divine Palace, don't blame me for being merciless." Jian Chen snorted coldly before making his way onto the 8th floor. After Jian Chen left, the pale-faced and haggard Ming Dong also glanced at the supreme god kings in a threatening manner. He sniggered, "Did you hear my brother's words? If you continue to oppose my brother, it won't just be grievances with Jian Chen. You'll also become an enemy of me. I know you all come from major organizations and clans, and you have very powerful backgrounds. If the organizations behind you are bold enough to make trouble for my brother, Ming Dong, swear on my life that I will use the power of the heavenly palace of Bisheng and make the organizations pay a heavy price." After throwing that out there, Ming Dong left with the 5 divine generals behind him, following Jian Chen to the 8th floor. The expressions of the supreme god kings all changed when they heard Ming Dong's threat. All of them feared the heavenly palace of Bisheng. Even if the Inata Grand Prime who watched over the organization was dead, the heavenly palace of Bisheng was still in existence that stood at the apex of the saints' world. This matter ends here. I can save you once, but not a second time. Jian Chen is the friend of our esteemed war god. I've said everything now. You're on your own now. Adriana gazed at the injured supreme god kings with mixed feelings and showed sympathy. Among the volcanoes on the 8th floor, Jian Chen stood with the damaged Inata tower in his hand. He hovered in the sky as he observed the surroundings cautiously. The senses of his soul swept out as he observed the surroundings time and time again. He was ready to enter the Inata tower at any time. The gigantic lizard is not outside. I wonder what happened during its battle with the supreme god kings. Has it returned to the depths of the lava, or has it left this floor to hunt down the other supreme god kings? Jian Chen wondered. Several days had already passed now, and the 8th floor had recovered its peace. Only the vast expanse of heavily damaged volcanoes depicted the intense battle that happened on the floor earlier. At this moment, Adriana appeared behind Jian Chen. She studied the messy surroundings and said, "I learned from those people that all the supreme god kings trapped on this floor worked together and engaged in a battle to the death against the lizard. In the end, in exchange for the lives of almost 400 supreme god kings, they heavily injured the lizard, and it returned to the lava. The gigantic lizard should have been around the 8th heavenly layer of infinite prime." The 8th heavenly layer of infinite prime? That's quite unexpected. I never thought that such a powerful lizard would be heavily injured by a group of god kings, Jian Chen sighed emotionally. However, he also knew that these god kings were nothing short of extraordinary. They all ranked on the god king's throne, and every single one of them possessed extremely great battle prowess. They also had several dozen god artifacts. Otherwise, let alone a few hundred god kings, even if there were over 1,000 of them, they would have all been slaughtered by the lizard. Adriana shot a glance at Jian Chen unhappily and said, "You're still not satisfied? Do you want to see the lizard kill all the supreme god kings and only then will you be satisfied?" Adriana sighed gently when she reached there. She became sorrowful. "We've lost several hundred supreme god kings all of a sudden. That means almost half of all the names on the god king's throne have vanished. It has probably caused a huge ruckus outside now. What happened here has probably alarmed quite a few grand primes. There will definitely be grand primes waiting outside once we leave," Shui Yunlan said grimly. She looked at Jian Chen and said sternly, "Now that it's like this, I can no longer leave through the main door of the Neptunian Divine Palace. The only way for me to leave is for the girl to gain the recognition of the Neptunian Divine Palace, and then send us off with the teleportation formation in here." Chapter 2155, The Person Behind It All, 3, Jian Chen's heart also sank. He understood what Shui Yunlan was saying. After the Ice Goddess Hall had fallen into a crisis, Shui Yunlan was afraid that the person in control of the Ice Goddess Hall would find her and discover his sister's whereabouts as a result. Hence, Shui Yunlan needed to act carefully and not expose herself before those peak experts who could basically peer into everything. This was because no one could be certain whether any of the people who assisted the traders of the Ice Goddess Hall among these peak experts. No one could be certain whether any of them bore ill intentions towards the Ice Goddess Hall or his sister either. Shui Yunlan's fate would be evident if an expert like that existed outside once she left through the main door. With Shui Yunlan's strength, she could claim to be invincible in the Neptunian Divine Palace. Apart from Qing Shan, who ranked first on the God King's throne, Shui Yunlan still had not encountered an opponent that matched her evenly. Even the person who ranked second, Zhu Wen, had to work with two other Supreme God Kings who ranked in the top 10 to reach a stalemate against Shui Yunlan. However, once she went outside, Shui Yunlan would still be as puny as an ant before those chaotic primes or even grand primes. "Are you certain that there's a teleportation formation in the Neptunian Divine Palace?" Jian Chen asked seriously as he looked at Shui Yunlan with shining eyes. Shui Yunlan nodded gently, "There definitely are. It's just that the teleportation formation is in a region sealed up from the public. There are only 3 ways to reach these. The first method is to overcome the obstructions with absolute strength, opening the sealed region to everyone." Shui Yunlan paused there before speaking bitterly. The Neptunian Divine Palace is a high-quality god artifact. Its toughness is unimaginable, so even regular Grand Primes don't have the ability to open up this sealed region, let alone us. As a result, this method is impossible. The second method is to obtain the permission of the artifact spirit and get the artifact spirit to send us there. However, from how it seems right now, this second method is also impossible. As a result, we only have one last method left, and that is for the Neptunian Divine Palace to take a master quickly before obtaining the permission of the new master and having them send us out. It looks like we really have to get Xiao Man to gain the recognition of the Neptunian Divine Palace as soon as possible, Jian Chen murmured. His gaze became determined, and he said, let's go to the 12th floor first. Jian Chen immediately held Shengguan Muer's hand and left the 8th floor with everyone, climbing their way up. When their group arrived on the 9th floor, they discovered over 100 Supreme God Kings covered in wounds scattered around the passageway. They all sat on the ground, silently recovering through ingesting many pills. Jian Chen glanced at them and discovered that they were no different from the Supreme God Kings on the 7th floor. They were all heavily injured and covered with burn wounds. Some of them had even been charred by the terrifying heat of the lava, where a heavy, burnt smell still lingered in the air after a few days. Everyone was scattered in this region because they were absolutely exhausted. Not only were they extremely weak, but some of them were even barely clinging on to their lives. Even just moving from where they sat was an extremely difficult matter. They could not hurry off, so they could only heal on the spot. Although they managed to survive the battle against the gigantic lizard, they had clearly paid an unimaginable price as well. Jian Chen. At this moment, a furious call rang out. Several hundred meters away, a supreme god king with various parts charred suddenly stood up. His eyes were piercing like swords as he stared straight at Jian Chen. A powerful sword intent radiated from him. Although he was heavily injured and blackened to the point where he was unrecognizable, he still possessed an astonishing presence when he stood up. Zhu Wen. Ru Di and Ji Yi both called out when they saw this person. Their gazes were strange and filled with shock. He was the expert who ranked second on the God King's throne, Zhu Wen. Not only was Zhu Wen in horrible shape, covered in severe burns, but there were even many vicious wounds on him as well. He was even missing huge chunks of flesh on certain parts of his body. Zhu Wen's long, graceful hair had vanished. It had been replaced by a bald, black head. His left arm was missing as well, only leaving behind his right arm. His current shape really was miserable. In the surroundings, the healing Supreme God Kings all opened their eyes. They all stared at Jian Chen sharply, viciously, and hatefully. Clearly, these Supreme God Kings hated Jian Chen from the bottom of their hearts due to what had happened on the 8th floor. Let's go directly to the 12th floor, Jian Chen glanced past Zhu Wen indifferently. He did not stay for long. He made his way through the group with the people behind him as they continued upwards. He could already tell that the Supreme God Kings were basically incapacitated. They no longer posed a threat to him. Since they could no longer kill him, there was no point in wasting time there. No one dared to stand forward and block them from leaving in such a composed fashion. Many of them had gained a deep impression of Shui Yunlan and Adriana's strength. Coupled with how Rui Di and Ji Yi were both experts who ranked in the top 10 of the God King's throne and the 5 divine generals of the heavenly palace of Bishan, no one could pose a threat to them in the current situation. Even when Jian Chen's group made their way past them, they still felt nervous and uneasy, as they were afraid that Jian Chen would suddenly attack them. After all, they were nowhere close to their peak condition. Now that they had become so weakened that they were basically incapacitated, they could even die to the hands of an over-god. At this moment, the ground began to shake violently as if it was struck by something terrifying. It rose and fell drastically in an exaggerated and shocking fashion. The origin energy on the entire floor fell into a state of abnormal disorder as well. Even the moon in the sky completely lost its glow at that moment. Losing the only source of light, the entire Neptunian divine palace plunged into utter darkness. The sudden occurrence made Jian Chen's group halt. They were all surprised as they looked around cluelessly. They were surprised and in doubt. What has happened? What is happening? No, impossible. The 5 elements of this space have become unstable. Yin and Yang are no longer balanced. Even the laws of the world have become chaotic. Heavens, I think I see the sky collapsing. The Neptunian moon has vanished. What is happening? It has become much more difficult to condense the power of laws. Cries from the supreme God Kings constantly rang out from the surroundings. The sudden occurrence made all of their expressions change as they studied the surroundings uneasily. Even without the moonlight, the darkness was unable to affect them at all. All the people there could see very far away in the darkness without the use of the senses of their souls. Jian Chen, Shui Yunlan, Adriana, and so on all frowned. They glanced at the surroundings sternly. They could clearly feel that the laws of the world in the Neptunian divine palace seemed to be influenced by a mysterious power, causing it to become extremely chaotic. It became several times more difficult for everyone to use the power of laws. Chapter 2156, The Person Behind It All, 4, I don't know what has happened, but it can't be good. Look at the sky, Shui Yunlan's cold voice rang out. She currently had her head tilted as she stared at the black sky without blinking at all. Her cold, emotionless eyes bore a rare smear of seriousness. Everyone looked at the sky with that. Their eyes immediately narrowed. Even though the sky was pitch black, without any light, they could see through the darkness and void with their cultivation at God King. Currently, they could clearly see the sky shatter and vanish at a visible rate. It's the artifact spirit. It's the artifact spirit of the Neptunian divine palace. The sudden occurrences to the Neptunian divine palace must be caused by the artifact spirit, a supreme God King healing nearby cried out. He looked at the sky with a multitude of emotions. There was eagerness, excitement as well as unease. Yep. It has to be related to the artifact spirit. Does this mean that the artifact spirit will be appearing? Another supreme God King called out in surprise and delight. All the supreme God Kings nearby struggled to remain calm when they heard that. Emotions flooded their eyes. They looked around with burning desire, eagerness, and hope. At the same time, many of them thought of something. The appearance of the artifact spirit meant that the Neptunian divine palace was about to take on a new owner. This made many of them nervous. Something is off, Jian Chen growled. His gaze shone like a blaze as sword chi gathered. He paid extremely close attention to the sky as his heart weighed heavier and heavier. The changes to the sky at that moment made him experience a vague illusion as if the sky was being devoured by a mysterious and great power. As a direct result, the sky shattered and was reduced to void. The Neptunian divine palace was changing. At the same time, an old man in simple robes sat on the highest mountain peak in the Neptunian mountains several million kilometers from Jian Chen and the others. He also stared at the pitch-black sky sternly. He was Master Chanlong. At this moment, a small set of formation banners flew out from Master Chanlong's space ring by itself. It radiated with a powerful pulse of energy and immediately conjured a huge python. It stared at the sky with its snake eyes that were around the size of a normal human's head as its thick tail swept about uneasily. What is happening? Why do I suddenly feel very agitated, where I can't calm down at all? The python produced a mental pulse. In reality, the snake was conjured by the formation banners while there was a soul trapped within the banners. Master Chanlong glanced at the soul strangely when he heard that. He said, "You actually feel the same. That means we are the same. I've also become extremely irritated after the sky suddenly changed. It's like millions of ants are crawling on me. I can't calm down no matter what." Old man Chanlong, I suddenly have this urge to kill. The trapped soul abruptly became agitated. It revolved around Chanlong with much unease with its huge, serpentine body. Aren't you skilled in divination, where you can see through the heavenly secrets as well as peer into the past and the future? Have a look at what's happening. Master Chanlong sucked in a deep breath and forcefully remained calm. In reality, his breathing became more and more ragged while his heart beat faster and faster. The strange sense of irritation in him became more and more intense. There's nothing. I see nothing. I can't tell what's happening at all. At this moment, a beam of light suddenly appeared in the pitch-black sky. A sun had appeared silently. This was the Neptunian sun currently. The Neptunian sun no longer had its brightness from before. Not only was it extremely dim like a firefly, but it tottered in the sky as well. Run! Escape from here. The Neptunian divine palace is about to be lost. I can't last much longer. Run! As the gloomy Neptunian sun appeared, a weak voice rang out as well. It was obscure, but it resounded through the entire Neptunian divine palace. At that moment, the same voice rang through every inch of every floor of the Neptunian divine palace, allowing everyone to hear it clearly. When the voice ended, the dim Neptunian sun that had suddenly appeared in the sky vanished once again, swallowed up by the darkness. All the god kings gathered at the entrance of the 9th floor were stunned, but this only lasted for a very short moment. Afterwards, it was swallowed up by intense fear and dread. Even the expressions of Jian Chen and the others changed suddenly. They suddenly realized that they were in trouble. Did the voice just then come from the artifact spirit? I can't find the origins of the voice at all, and the voice appeared with the strange Neptunian sun, so it must have come from the artifact spirit. Oh no, something is happening to the Neptunian divine palace. Run, everybody, the Neptunian divine palace is about to be lost. Even the godlike artifact spirit is about to die. We can't stay here. Run, run quickly. The expressions of all the supreme god kings gathered there changed drastically. After confirming that the voice came from the artifact spirit of the Neptunian divine palace, they all became filled with angst. Run! Leave here as quickly as possible. Jian Chen's heart also sank. Suddenly, he called out to the people beside him. However, just when Jian Chen had said those words, he suddenly became astounded. He staggered, and he actually lost his footing, falling right to the ground. Plop! Plop! Basically at the same time, the sounds of people collapsing in the surroundings rang out constantly. Even Adriana, Shui Yunlan, Rui Di, Ji Yi, Shengwan Mu'er, Ming Dong, and the 5 divine generals seemed to lose all their power at that moment, having all collapsed onto the ground. Even the supreme god kings healing in the surroundings seemed to deflate like balloons. They either sat on the ground weakly, or they laid on the ground powerlessly. None of them remained standing. Jian Chen's complexion became extremely horrible. At that moment, not only did he felt like he had lost all his power, where he could not even move a finger, but he could not even use the chaotic force within him. Most importantly, he seemed to lose the senses of his soul as well. He had completely been reduced to an ordinary person. Chapter 2157, Samsara, 1, I can't even use origin energy. What's happening here? Oh no, a mysterious power has invaded my body. Not only have I lost all power, including my control over origin energy, but I can't even use the senses of my soul. My God King level laws that I have comprehended have departed from me. Has the artifact spirit of the Neptunian divine palace suffered an accident? Has the Neptunian divine palace already gained a master? How is this possible? At that moment, the expressions of all the supreme god kings changed, and they cried out. They all lost their composure as their minds were filled with fear and great dread. Everyone faced the same situation. In that split second, these glorious supreme god kings had been completely reduced to ordinary people. Jian Chen's heart became extremely heavy as well, and his face was ugly. He could sense that a mysterious power existed within his body. Even though it only seemed like an insignificant sliver, it was extremely powerful. Not only did it suppress the power of his soul, but even his chaotic force was suppressed. Even his loss of control over his body was caused by this power. What is this power? It's so terrifying, Jian Chen was shocked. Currently, he had become extremely frail. Not only was he unable to stand, but he was not even able to take out the Inata tower. Suddenly, Jian Chen's eyes narrowed. He stared ahead in shock. His gaze pierced through the darkness. With great clarity, he saw an extremely terrifying power turn into thick mist at a visible rate. It rolled towards everyone, blotting out the sky and swallowing everything it passed by. Oh no! Run, leave here, quick! The Neptunian Divine Palace has already gained a master, and they're hostile. They want to kill us all, the Supreme God Kings gathered there all cried out. All of them exerted all their efforts to crawl towards the 8th floor. Many of them were panic-stricken because they could all sense a heavy killing intent from the mist that rolled over. It was terrifying, enough for all of them to experience chills. Even experts as powerful as Zhu Wen, Shui Yunlan, and Adriana experienced chills across their body as if they could not escape from the crisis. However, these people had lost all their power. Even when they strained every single muscle to crawl towards the 8th floor, they were as slow as snails. On the other hand, the mist that rolled over with sharp killing intent moved faster and faster. It was impossible for them to reach the 8th floor before the mist engulfed them. Jian Chen stared straight at the almost demonic mist as he felt extremely flustered. He tried to come up with a countermeasure as hard as he could. Unfortunately, he was no different from the other Supreme God Kings. He too had been reduced to an ordinary person. He could not use the profound sword qi. He could not even open a space ring and take out the cosmic movement talisman inside. But just when Jian Chen was at the end of his rope, his face suddenly froze, and afterwards, one of his eyes began to shine with a faint violet glow, while the other turned to a faint azure. The sword spirits in his body had suddenly appeared. They were cautious about being in front of so many Supreme God Kings, so they did not dare to appear directly. They could only borrow Jian Chen's eyes to observe the situation of the outside world. It really is the power of samsara. The sword spirits seemed to confirm their thoughts as they saw the terrifying power that flooded over. They cried out, clearly extremely shocked. Oh no! Master, this power of samsara is extremely terrifying. You can't come in contact with it at all. With Master's current level of cultivation, Master can't put up any resistance against it. Even just becoming tainted by a tiny sliver will do Master, Qing Suo said in a panic. The power of samsara from the samsaric immortal exalt. Jian Chen smiled bitterly. The sword spirits had warned him far too late. It was also at this moment that the mist-like power of samsara rolled in like a storm. It engulfed Jian Chen and all the Supreme God Kings. Immediately, Jian Chen felt his vitality rapidly leak away. The tremendous life force within him quickly withered while his soul dimmed. He became more and more powerless. In a daze, he seemed to see 6 huge discs hanging high above his head as if they were trying to pull him in. The power of samsara was just too terrifying and frightening. Jian Chen could not resist at all before the power of samsara. Even Shui Yunlan and so on faced the same situation as Jian Chen. Before the power of samsara, none of them could resist. Their life force withered away as their souls dimmed. At this moment, the 9th floor was not the only place where the power of samsara had appeared. All 12 floors had been engulfed by the power of samsara. The 8th floor of the Neptunian Divine Palace also became filled with the power of samsara. The burning hot lava below darkened at a visible rate. The power of samsara seemed to be able to permeate everything, where both the endless volcanoes and scorching hot lava were unable to stop its pace. Roar! At this moment, a furious beast's cry rang out. The gigantic lizard leapt out from the lava. There were vicious wounds on it. Its huge eyes were filled with a strange fear and alarm as if it wanted to escape from here. However, the light in its eyes dimmed very soon as if all of its power had vanished at that moment. Its colossal body that had been thrown into the air slammed into the lava loudly, gradually sinking back down. Even the 12th floor of the Neptunian divine palace failed to avoid this fate. The 4 grand prime statues were also flooded by the power of samsara. One of them collapsed, while the 3 remaining statues shone with a hazy light as they endured stubbornly. The only place unaffected in the entire Neptunian divine palace was the Neptunian mountains on the 9th floor. However, the Grand Exalt's formation under the mountains was operating at full capacity as well, forming a huge barrier of energy that enveloped the entire place, blocking the power of samsara. Master Chanlong stood on the highest peak in there as he stared at the rampaging power of samsara outside. He was extremely stern. The huge snake wrapped around beside him. Its illusionary eyes were grave as it stared at the world outside without blinking. Ancient paths. At this moment, an obscure voice appeared in the surroundings. The voice was ancient and also seemed aged as if it had experienced countless eras. It boomed through the entire Neptunian mountains with an aloof feeling as if it was indifferent to everything. Chanlong and the huge python's eyes narrowed as they all looked at the same place. Right in front of them, a blurry figure hovered in the sky beyond the Neptunian mountains. The power of samsara surged around him, seemingly forming a cloud that he stood on. From just a single glance, the blurry figure seemed like the ruler of the world. He even stood on the great power of samsara. "Who are you?" Master Chanlong asked sternly. As soon as he saw the blurry figure, all the hairs on his body stood up as a chill ran down his spine. All the scales on the python beside him stood up as well while its eyes had shrunken to the size of a speck. "I am Samsaric," the blurry figure said. His ancient voice was filled with the endless power of the universe, disturbing the 3,000 laws and throwing them into disorder. Chapter 2158, Samsara, 2, Samsaric. Master Chanlong murmured in confusion. He found the name to be familiar as if he had heard it somewhere before. However, in the next moment, Master Chanlong shuddered violently. He stared right at the blurry figure outside the Neptunian mountains and cried out in shock, "Why, were the Samsaric immortal exalt who destroyed the Taoist sect of Neptunia single-handedly?" After learning the person's identity, Master Chanlong's heart was in turmoil. He was extremely shocked and felt great disbelief. The legends about the Samsaric immortal exalt had been piercing to his ears ever since he entered the Neptunian divine palace. However, every single rumor was extremely astonishing, enough for any god king who heard it for the first time to feel completely astounded. The Taoist sect of Neptunia was a peak organization that shook up and dominated in the saints' world. Not only did it possess millions of disciples, but it even had 4 grand primes. One of the grand primes had almost reached a state of perfection with their cultivation and was known as one of the most powerful experts below Grand Exalt in the past. It was possible to imagine just how glorious and prosperous the Taoist sect of Neptunia had been in the past with such a powerful ancestor. However, the Samsaric immortal exalt had single-handedly destroyed the Taoist sect of Neptunia that seemed monstrous in the eyes of many in the saints' world. The 4 grand primes, including the ancestor only second to grand exalts, all died in the Neptunian divine palace. No one managed to survive. If it were not for the arrival of one of the 7 grand exalts of the saints' world, the grand exalt of ancient ways, the Taoist sect of Neptunia probably would not even have been able to protect the Neptunian divine palace, a high-quality god artifact. It definitely would have been smashed to pieces by the Samsaric immortal exalt. This was more than enough to demonstrate the might of the Samsaric immortal exalt. Yet, at this current moment, the Samsaric immortal exalt that seemed to belong to legends to Master Chanlong had actually appeared before him in person. It impacted him tremendously. The trapped soul beside Chanlong widened its snake eyes as well. It also stared ahead in complete shock at the blurry figure that claimed to be the Samsaric immortal exalt. Its shock had reached its limit as well. Even though they could not see the blurry figure's appearance, they could sense a terrifying, overwhelming pressure from him. The figure said nothing. He only hovered in the sky silently as the terrifying power of samsara surged violently like a raging river, condensing into a cloud beneath his feet. It did seem like he was riding a cloud. He did not confirm his identity, nor did he deny it. He just silently stood outside the Neptunian mountains for a while as if he was staring at where Qianlong stood. A while later, his figure turned into the power of samsara and vanished like mist. He did not enter the Neptunian mountains. Several million kilometers away, Jian Chen and all the injured supreme god kings laid on the ground powerlessly. They had been enveloped by the power of samsara, and their vitality drained away rapidly. They became weaker and weaker from the tremendous loss of vitality. Our vitality is about to be completely drained away, but the mysterious energy shows no signs of stopping. Are we all going to die here today? Rui Di said bitterly. He did not fear death. However, he found it regretful to just die here unknowingly. According to the rumor that has always existed, when the Neptunian moon appears, something big will happen to the Neptunian divine palace. Many people believe this to be the awakening of the artifact spirit and the selection of a new master, but it looks like this was what it was really referring to, Shui Yunlan sighed. I don't mind dying here, but what will happen to Her Majesty? Her Majesty is still very weak right now. It'll be very difficult for her to survive in the saints' world alone. Shui Yunlan suddenly thought of the snow goddess, who was still waiting for her cultivation resources. Immediately, Shui Yunlan became worried. At this moment, a long howl suddenly rang out from beside Shui Yunlan. Jian Chen, who had originally collapsed on the ground, suddenly shone with a faint, red glow. The moment the red glow appeared, a desolate presence that seemed to come from the primordial past surged out. Along with it came a terrifying presence that completely exceeded Jian Chen's current strength, striking fear in many supreme god kings. Pressured by the power of samsara, Jian Chen used the power of the bloodline from the ancient skywolf within him. It formed a paper-thin barrier around him. After using the power of the bloodline, the power of samsara that permeated the entire Neptunian divine palace seemed to be pushed away temporarily. As the bloodline's power rapidly drained away, Jian Chen gradually recovered some strength. He sat up with great difficulty. His actions immediately stunned everyone present. They all stared at him and showed shock. Ignoring the gazes around him, Jian Chen slowly closed his eyes and concentrated on gathering up all the power of his soul. He wanted to take out the Enata Tower, throw the people around him into it, and then leave here with the cosmic movement talisman in a single stroke. However, whether it was taking out the Enata Tower or taking out the cosmic movement talisman from his space ring, all of these actions required the use of the power of his soul. If it were some other time, it would have naturally been effortless for him to do that. However, now that he was enveloped by the power of samsara, he could only rely on the thin barrier erected by the power of the ancient skywolf's bloodline to gather slivers of the power of his soul and complete what he needed to do. Hurry up! Hurry up! As Jian Chen gathered the power of his soul, he was filled with anxiety. The power of the bloodline drained far too quickly. He could not last much longer. There's actually the presence of the ancient skywolf's bloodline. At this moment, an ancient voice rang out of nowhere, booming through the surroundings. As the voice rang out, the power of samsara in the surroundings churned violently. Nearby, an illusionary figure that seemed to be a part of the power of samsara silently appeared. As soon as the figure appeared, it seemed to dominate the entire world, causing the laws in the surroundings to undergo some mysterious changes. The barrier around Jian Chen shattered instantly as if the laws of the world had pressed against it. Samsaric immortal exalt, please have mercy. At this moment, an azure and a violet ball of light suddenly appeared above Jian Chen's head. The sword spirits had appeared, turning into a young man and woman who seemed to be in their 20s. They gazed at the blurry figure excitedly. The appearance of the sword spirits caused the power of samsara around the samsaric immortal exalt to pulse unnaturally. He called out, Ziying, Qing Sua, why have the two of you appeared in the saint's world? The samsaric immortal Exalt's ancient voice was filled with surprise. Chapter 2159, Samsara, 3, It's a long story. Samsaric immortal Exalt, please stay your hand and not harm our master, Ziying pleaded. His voice was filled with respect. The samsaric immortal Exalt strode over and arrived before Jian Chen. At the same time, his illusionary figure condensed from the power of samsara gradually gained flesh, blood, and life. It shone with the light of life, which surged like a tremendous ocean. When the samsaric immortal Exalt arrived before Jian Chen, he had turned into an old man with flesh and blood. Silver draped to his waist, and he had a healthy glow to his face. His old eyes were profound like the vast cosmos. 6 blurry discs of samsara seemed to revolve within them, containing the profound truths of the world. It was like he could peer through the mysteries of the universe and grasp the supreme laws. As the samsaric immortal Exalt studied Jian Chen also opened his eyes and stared at the samsaric immortal Exalt curiously. He felt extremely curious and much admiration towards the samsaric immortal Exalt, who was one of the 5 grand exalts of the immortals world. This was because the samsaric immortal Exalt had destroyed the Taoist sect of Neptunia alone. His strength was evident. He was truly a sovereign of the world, a supreme existence. The first feeling that Jian Chen experienced from the samsaric immortal Exalt was that he seemed to be covered in an immortal presence. There was a sense of mysteriousness like he was shrouded in mist. It seemed like he could stand on the clouds. Even though he just stood there very casually, it felt like he had fused with the universe as the laws of the world. However, when Jian Chen's eyes met the samsaric immortal Exalt's, he immediately felt his head spin and his soul lose control. It felt like his soul was about to leave his body and be drawn away by the discs of samsara in the samsaric immortal Exalt's eyes. In shock, Jian Chen closed his eyes as soon as possible. He no longer looked at the samsaric immortal Exalt's eyes. Instead, he silently stabilized his soul. I never thought I'd meet the successor of that old guy in a foreign land. Sigh, it's just a pity that you cultivate the chaotic body, so your future is destined to be limited. You probably can't bear the burden. The samsaric immortal Exalt stared at Jian Chen and signed gently as if he was extremely disappointed about Jian Chen's chaotic body. Naturally, Jian Chen could tell that he was disappointed in him as the successor of the sword sect of Violet Heavens because there were plenty of people who cultivated the chaotic body in the immortals world, but no one had been able to become an immortal Exalt throughout history. As time went on, it turned into a concept at the peak of the chaotic body was Immortal Emperor. Even though the chaotic body was very powerful, known to be invincible among the same realm of cultivation and was even powerful enough to challenge those at a higher level of cultivation, immortal emperors would still be restricted by their cultivation. No matter how impressive or astonishing their battle prowess was, they were still an immortal emperor in the end. Before those supreme grand exalts that seemed to have become the laws of the world, they remained as puny as ants, unable to put up any resistance. As a result, Jian Chen's future was predetermined in the eyes of the samsaric immortal Exalt. He believed it was impossible for Jian Chen to reach the same level of cultivation as the old master of the sword spirits. Samsaric immortal Exalt, you must not underestimate our master. Our master isn't as simple as you think he is. We believe the rumor that the chaotic body cannot progress to immortal Exalt will be disproven by our master, the sword spirits said confidently. They originated from yin and yang qi, so they possessed certain innate advantages and abilities. From time to time, they could see secrets of the world that even grand exalts could not forecast. They knew Jian Chen was extraordinary. Senior Samsaric, there are some people here that are my friends. I hope you can show mercy and spare them this time. Jian Chen was no longer affected by the power of samsara now. He stood up with great difficulty and bowed towards the samsaric immortal Exalt out of respect. Currently, all the supreme god kings in the surroundings had fainted with the appearance of the samsaric immortal exalt. Jian Chen was the only one who remained conscious. Don't worry. None of them will die. I didn't hide a sliver of the power of my soul in the Neptunian divine palace for all these years to deal with these kids, said the samsaric immortal exalt. Regardless of how monstrous a talent these supreme god kings possessed, they still did not catch his attention. Senior Samsaric, may I ask how the Neptunian divine palace's artifact spirit is doing now? Jian Chen asked. He had many questions he wanted to ask. Whether it was about the Neptunian divine palace or the immortal's world, he wanted to understand them all through the samsaric immortal exalt. In particular, the artifact spirit of the Neptunian divine palace was the matter that Jian Chen cared about the most right now. The artifact spirit has only been temporarily suppressed by me. My original body is far away in the saint's world, so it's impossible for me to kill the artifact spirit in a short amount of time with just a sliver of the power of my soul, said the samsaric immortal exalt. Jian Chen was shocked. The samsaric immortal exalt had only used a sliver of the power of his soul to become a godlike existence in the Neptunian divine palace. He could casually suppress the artifact spirit that possessed the power of the divine hall. If his original body had come, just how terrifying would he have been? He could probably shatter the Neptunian divine palace with just a wave of his wand, crushing the artifact spirit between his fingers. Samsaric immortal exalt, may we ask how the sword sect of Violet Heavens is doing right now? Does it still exist in the immortal's world? The sword spirits also asked. They were extremely nervous, as if they were afraid of learning something they would struggle to accept. Although they were only sword spirits, the twin swords were the sect treasures of the sword sect of Violet Heavens after all. The sword spirits held a unique feeling towards the sword sect of Violet Heavens. The samsaric immortal exalt fell silent and the sword spirits mentioned the sword sect of Violet Heavens. His response made the hearts of the sword spirits suddenly sink. Sorrow filled their faces. They asked in a trembling voice, has the sword sect of Violet Heavens ceased to exist? Jian Chen's heart shivered from that. He felt nothing towards the sword sect of Violet Heavens. He had not even seen it before, but he was still the successor of the sect after all. If the sword sect of Violet Heavens had really been destroyed, it would be difficult on him as well. Sigh, the samsaric immortal exalt exhaled gently. He shook his head, the sword sect of Violet Heavens still exists, but the situation might not be very optimistic right now. The samsaric immortal exalt paused there and looked at Jian Chen. He said seriously, if your identity still hasn't been exposed in the saint's world, then it's best for you to stay here for a while. Before you become powerful, returning to the immortal's world rashly won't turn out well. Senior Samsaric, enough. We can talk later. I have even more important matters to attend to. These matters will affect the future of the immortal's world, the samsaric immortal exalt cut off Jian Chen. He was unwilling to talk anymore. Afterwards, he looked at the unconscious supreme god kings in the surroundings and suddenly reached out. With that, the space in the surroundings suddenly shrank up, having been affected. To Jian Chen's utter disbelief, he saw threads of various sizes being drawn from the supreme god kings. They all gathered in the samsaric immortal exalt's hands. These are threads of karma. Jian Chen's face immediately changed when he recognized the threads of energy of various thicknesses. Immediately, he arrived before Shengguan Mu'er and pointed at Ming Dong, Shui Yunlan, Adriana, Rui Di, and Ji Yi. He said, Senior, these are all my friends. Please spare them. Although he knew that the samsaric immortal exalt would not touch their lives, Jian Chen sensed an ill omen when he saw their threads of karma being drawn out. The samsaric immortal exalt looked away and stared at Jian Chen deeply. His face sank slightly, they're from the saint's world. But not all people of the saint's world are enemies of the immortal's world. Moreover, Some of them have extremely close ties with me, enough for me to risk my life to protect them, Jian Chen said boldly and with determination. In reality, he had already become rather terrified. After all, he was facing one of the 5 grand exalts of the immortals world. Even if he was just a clone, Jian Chen still felt tremendous psychological pressure. Chapter 2160, The Way of Karma. The samsaric immortal exalt looked at Jian Chen silently. His ancient gaze that was as profound as the vast universe gradually sharpened. In the eyes of the samsaric immortal exalt, it was basically impossible for Jian Chen to reach the peak. He believed that it would be impossible for Jian Chen to become someone that a grand exalt would take seriously, as he cultivated the chaotic body. However, Jian Chen was still the successor of the sword sect of Violet Heavens after all. No matter how great his future accomplishments would be and no matter how far he would be able to travel, he still belonged to the immortals world. The immortals world happened to oppose the saints' world. Under such a tense situation, he had become so close to the people of the saints' world. This displeased the samsaric immortal exalt greatly. Whatever. A while later, the samsaric immortal exalt sighed gently. The sharpness in his gaze gradually vanished, and his eyes became profound once again. He said, "I'll spare these people seeing how you're the only successor of that old guy." As he said that, the samsaric immortal exalt's hand loosened slightly, and the threads of karma from Shangguan Mu'er, Ming Dong, Shui Yunlan, Adriana, Rui Di, and Ji Yi immediately broke free from his grasp, returning to them. Out of the kids you want to protect, 3 of them have quite significant origins. They're closely related to grand exalts of the saints' world. If I were to play around with their karma, those people would definitely notice, so even if you didn't mention it, I wouldn't touch 3 of these people, said the samsaric immortal exalt. Every single person had different backgrounds and came in contact with different people, so their threads of karma would be different. Through the threads of karma, he had discovered that Adriana, Shui Yunlan, and Ming Dong actually had karma with the grand exalts of the saints' world. This prevented him from touching them recklessly. Jian Chen immediately became relieved when he heard that the samsaric immortal exalt would not touch Shangguan Mu'er and so on. He looked at the threads of karma in the samsaric immortal exalt's hand and gradually revealed doubt. He could clearly see that there were over 1,000 threads of karma that differed from each other in the samsaric immortal exalt's hand. Over 100 of them came from the supreme god kings nearby, while the rest seemed to have passed through space, reaching over here from somewhere unknown. A fire-red thread that was clearly much thicker than the rest raised Jian Chen's attention. Jian Chen seemed to sense the presence of the gigantic lizard from it. This allowed him to immediately confirm that the thread of karma came from the lizard. At this moment, Jian Chen's eyes suddenly narrowed. He discovered in great surprise that the thread of karma from the lizard had suddenly splayed out into many thin threads. The end of each thread was connected to a supreme god king there, and there was actually a thread that was connected to Jian Chen. Jian Chen's eyes narrowed, and he glanced around. He discovered that the only people who did not have the lizard's thread of karma was Shangguan Mu'er, Ming Dong, Shui Yunlan, Adriana, Rui Di, and Ji Yi. They had never had any contact with the lizard from the lava. Karma, Jian Chen sank into his thoughts when he realized this. He seemed to have comprehended something, gaining a rough understanding of the way of karma. I never would have thought that you can actually see the threads of karma, the samsaric immortal exalt's voice rang out. He looked at Jian Chen with quite some surprise and said, "You can see the threads of karma means that you've grasped the way of karma." The samsaric immortal exalt retracted his gaze, and he looked at the threads of karma in his control. He said in thought, "Everything in the world is bound by karma, ranging from newly born infants to grand exalts who stand at the apex of the world. No one can break free from karma. The communication and contact of people will lead to karma and the creation of threads of karma. They represent the ties you formed with these people. The contact between immortals, maybe in kindness or maybe in grievance, will also lead to karma and the formation of threads of karma. Just like the red thread you're looking at right now. It comes from the natural spirit that was born from the endless fire-attributed energy on the 8th floor of the Neptunian Divine Palace. You lot have come into contact with this natural spirit and have fought it, so a thread of karma has been formed between you and the natural spirit. However, the people you want to protect clearly have never come in contact or conflict with the natural spirit at all, so their relationship is a clean slate. Naturally, there are no threads of karma, the samsaric immortal exalt said slowly, explaining many secrets about the way of karma, allowing Jian Chen to deepen his understanding. Senior Samsaric, do you plan on using the threads of karma from these supreme god kings to find the people behind them? Jian Chen asked. As his understanding of karma gradually deepened, he seemed to understand the samsaric immortal exalt's intentions. The samsaric immortal exalt nodded, that's right. Since these kids are supreme god kings, their backgrounds are definitely significant. Through these threads of karma, I can easily find people that they have karma with. If they have close ties with some chaotic primes or even grand primes, I can even find these experts through the threads of karma. With my mastery of the way of karma and the vitality and bloodlines of these people, I can surpass both space and time to plant a demonic seed in all the people they have karma with. As long as I don't touch those grand primes that are far too outstanding, no one will be able to sense it. Jian Chen was shocked. That way, the samsaric immortal exalt could use these supreme god kings to deal with over 100 major organizations simultaneously and plant demonic seeds in the hearts of countless people. Even some regular grand primes would not be able to avoid this. It was just too terrifying. Although he had no idea what would happen once someone had a demonic seed planted within them, he knew that it could not be good without even thinking. Unfortunately, many people were killed by the natural spirit on the 8th floor, so there's only around 100 of them left, which is all the people here. As for the people scattered elsewhere, not a lot of them have ties with experts, so they're not particularly useful, continued the samsaric immortal exalt. He was filled with pity. Senior Samsaric, why must you do this? Jian Chen asked. For the immortals' world, the samsaric immortal exalt replied sternly. Afterwards, with a thought of his, all the vitality that had been drained from the god kings appeared in the air. Over 100 of them formed transparent little balls of light. They hovered above each supreme god king as they gradually approached their threads of karma. The samsaric immortal exalt had begun to take action. He attempted to use the threads of karma to find the people behind these supreme god kings and plant a demonic seed in the hearts of everything they had established karma with. Senior, Samsaric, you're a grand exalt of the immortals world after all, an existence that stands at the apex of a world. Yet, you're actually moving against these juniors today. Isn't that just degrading? At this moment, a woman's voice boomed out. It was extremely pleasant, just like the sounds of nature. There was a condescending sense of coldness in the voice. As the woman's voice rang out, the entire Neptunian divine palace shook violently. The power of samsara that permeated every inch of the place churned violently. You're tuning into the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.